think with all of our thresholds, they're a little bit arbitrary, and you have to find some number. And it's sort of, so I don't think we needed it. It was like it was calculated exactly. We're like, yeah, this seems about right. And then we brought it down to 25,000 because we got so much testimony that 40,000 was too high. Yeah. You know, there's just no right answer.
Well, the other thing is, you have to bring all these people to a meeting, and then they discover, oh, this is by right, we can't do it.
Well, that's something that commissioners raised too, is like manage sort of expectation.
2018 meeting of the Planning and Sustainability Commission to order. Previewing our agenda, we'll have items of interest from commissioners, the director's report. Then we have a consent agenda that consists of right-of-way number 8534, a proposed street vacation at Southeast 64th Ave, south of Southeast Sherman, and the minutes of our July 24th meeting. We'll then have a public hearing on the Neighborhood Contact Code Update Project, and that will be followed by a work session on the residential infill project. Okay, and I will apologize to everybody if it looks like I'm looking down my nose at you. I brought my reading glasses instead of my bifocals, so I am looking down my nose at you. Items of interest. Andres.
I wanted to follow up with something I heard about I always mess up this name, the Manufactured Dwelling Zones project. To my understanding, there have been 2 notices submitted of current parks to be sold and 2 that have filed for redevelopment. And the concern that I've heard from the community on this is that the original meeting where we brought the project forward and took public testimony, we had so many people for public testimony that we extended the meeting and were unable to vote on it as we had originally thought. And so a possible suggestion that was brought to me is the idea of seeing if there's a way for us to have some sort of feedback mechanism where once we start realizing there's a lot of people signed up to testify, we might have to bump this vote. In that particular situation, I think most of the testimony was in support of the eventual decision that PSC took. And I'm sure that they would have been willing to forego testifying if it had meant that we continued our conversation then. Or at the very least, that could possibly be something that we share. We're running short on time. We have a lot of testimony. If we run out of time, we're going to have to continue this conversation at a future meeting. So looking to see if there's opportunities there to improve our process.
Thank you. Other items of interest? Okay. Susan, director's report?
Just a quick message that I sent you an email.
I'm not sure your mic's on.
I sent you an email a couple of hours ago that just was a reflection by a reporter on what's going on in Vancouver and Seattle and Portland in terms of residential infill, to let us know that we are not alone in these discussions and that the entire West Coast is beginning to have the discussion around how do you allow for more opportunity and choice in our single family neighborhoods. And so take a look.
Thank you, Susan. All right, that brings us to the consent agenda, which again consists of a street vacation and our minutes from July 24th. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I confirm. Does Andres count towards quorum?
Yes, Andres counts towards quorum but cannot vote, is my understanding. So, okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, consent agenda is adopted. Neighborhood Contact Code hearing. Sarah, you want to come up and introduce the topic?
So I brought you a PowerPoint because it always has to be a PowerPoint. So my name is Sarah Wright. I work at Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and I'm here just to give you a quick refresher on the Neighborhood Contact Project before we get started with the testimony. So just want to kind of bring you back the problems that we're trying to solve with this proposal. We wanted to bring more information to more people more predictably, I think is really the summary of what we're trying to do with this proposal, addressing the reach of notice, the consistency, and predictability. So the key elements of the proposal: all projects in most zones creating more than 10,000 square feet of new building would trigger this requirement. The applicant would post a sign on site, which is still posted on your wall, just so you can refresh yourself, and sends an informational email or mail to the Neighborhood Association, District Coalition of Business Association, and School District for larger projects. If the project creates more than 25,000 square feet of new building, the applicant must ensure that the project is presented at a public meeting. So just to kind of compare, before May of 2018, there was one set of requirements for the Neighborhood Contact code. Now there's currently a different, the requirements have been changed a little bit, and we're proposing some additional changes to that. So in terms of what the initial contact is, right now it's a letter offering a meeting with the neighborhood association. This would be changed to a letter summarizing the project and a sign summarizing the project that would be posted on site. Recipients of the contact, we're keeping that the same, except raising the threshold for notification of school districts, just because they're primarily interested in larger projects. And the sign, of course, would have a larger audience of anybody who happens to pass by, and that's a key element of this proposal. The method of initial contact is proposed to be changed from certified mail, which I did think that nobody liked, but we got a piece of testimony saying they want certified mail back, so I rescind that statement that nobody likes certified mail. So we're proposing to have that be email or mail. Meeting responsibility, the neighborhood association is currently responsible for making the decision about whether or not the meeting will be held, and then hosting that meeting. This proposal would shift that responsibility to the applicant. Meeting timing, it's very variable. Now it can be up to 45 days after the letter is mailed. This would set parameters. It can only be 14 days or more after the letter is mailed and 14 days or more before the application is submitted. Meeting consistency is now dependent on whether the neighborhood association is available, receives the contact letter in time, and also whether they have time on their agenda to address the project. That would shift to being a required meeting. And I'm not going to read these to you because that would be painful, but the point of this is that right now the triggers for what kinds of projects trigger this requirement are kind of all over the zoning code. It's really variable, and one thing to note is that in general, projects that have been through a land use review are exempt from the neighborhood contact requirements. That's something we changed with this proposal. So it would apply to most zones, adding more than 10,000 square feet, and that's pretty much a clean threshold there. Adding more than 25,000 square feet for the meeting. For land use reviews, the thresholds would be 4 lots and 11 lots. And we're proposing to remove the triggers that are in the other parts of the code, like in the design or historic elements. So, and this is just a refresher of where the neighborhood contact happens. It happens before BDS or the city even knows that this project is happening. It happens before the building permit application or the land use review application. And I think it's also important just to note that there are different decision makers at each of these points. Neighborhood contact is a conversation between the public and the applicant. It has no bearing on any decisions. It could be for a by right development or before a land use review process, but it is not information coming to the city. It is a conversation between the applicant and the public. As you move further along in the process, it becomes a conversation where public input is received by the city staff or hearings officer. But there's just different decision makers, and I think that's an important element to keep in mind. We've gotten, I think, 16 unique pieces of testimony so far. The testimony, there's mostly the points are focused on kind of 4 different areas. So the threshold for where the notice should be triggered, testimony that's too high or that it should be not a consistent threshold, but should be triggered by different things. Comments about the content of required notice should include information about massing and context. We got a couple comments about parking. I think also one about affordable units, and be made available to the general public through email subscription lists, and also one, as I said, be sent by certified mail. So, and then the threshold for the meeting requirement. There's a wide variety of opinions about that. Threshold is too high, it's too low, it's too high for some zones, maybe not too high for others. And then one piece of testimony suggesting that should be a middle range in which a meeting is offered to the neighborhood association, as it is with the current requirement, and then setting a higher threshold at which the meeting is required. The meeting should be required to be held outside the neighborhood association, required to be held inside the neighborhood association. Some testimony about how the meeting should be more tightly constrained with more specific limits on how long it should be or where it should be. And then also first offered to the neighborhood association. So the neighborhood association could decide if they want to host the meeting, and then if they don't, the applicant has to host the meeting. So it's just some quick testimony. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. We do have some BDS and BPS staff here to answer questions too, if you have those after the testimony. So thank you.
Okay. Any clarifying questions for Sarah before we begin the testimony?
The listserv question. So there is no place in the city that all of these notices would be accumulated?
So the proposal currently doesn't have any, so it all is happening before the city knows about the proposal. So there wouldn't be any documentation coming into the city until the application comes to BDS. So in the current proposal, no, there would be no sort of listserv or anything like that, yeah. But that is something that has surfaced as an interest.
I intend to offer an amendment around it when we get to work session. So.
I was just prompting Chris there.
Anything else for Sarah before the hearing? All right, thank you, Sarah. So at this point, I will open the public hearing on the Neighborhood Contact Code. Anyone who wishes to testify, please fill out a registration card and give it to Love. I have, I think, about 4 right now. I'm not sure if we notice this for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but we'll allow. Okay, I'm going to be generous and allow 3 because we don't have too many folks today. So I will call up 3 at a time. We'll start with Leon Porter, Doug Klotz, and Christian Trabal. And they will be followed by David Scholhammer and anybody else I get after that. See me over there. Okay. Leon?
Okay, hi. Okay, I'm Leon Porter. I'm a homeowner in Sullivan's Gulch and loosely affiliated with the Portland Yimbies. And I generally support this proposal. And I think that since Portland's in a housing emergency, it's really important not to excessively burden developers with extra requirements that will slow development or create extra burdens. I also feel that to be more balanced, the contact code should give a less prominent role to neighborhood associations because they tend to represent the interests of established homeowners and do not very effectively represent the interests of tenants and the future residents of the buildings that are going to get developed. And those are the people who are going to be most intensely affected by the new development, the people who will get to live in it. So I have some specific ideas here. First, I would like you guys to raise the threshold for the neighborhood contact meetings back up to 40,000 feet in cases where the development is allowed by right. And maybe for buildings with affordable units, it could be even higher, like 60,000 feet. Then regarding the reach of notice question, I really like the idea of a listserv, and I strongly support that. And if the city is going to get these notices from developers, as it should, then it might not be necessary to require the developers to also send notices to the neighborhood association and the neighborhood coalition and the business association, because anyone could just sign up to get those notices from the city. Post notices on the city website and just let anybody, including those organizations, sign up. That would also let other interested organizations and people sign up. And it would be best if people could sign up to receive notices citywide or by specific neighborhoods. I'd like to say that I saw the testimony online by the Overlook Neighborhood Association, and I generally would like you to do the opposite of what they're recommending. Specifically, I don't think you should require developers to send the neighborhood associations notices by certified mail, and I really don't think you should require them to give the neighborhood associations the right of first refusal to host meetings. I mean, the developer should set up the meeting at a place where people can attend it who are interested and at a convenient time, but it doesn't all have to go through the neighborhood association. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Doug.
Hi, I'm Doug Klotz, Commissioner Chair Smith and Commissioners. I support the concepts in this proposal, and I've noted the problems with the existing system and years on the Richmond Neighborhood Association on development on division coming in, that so many times developers come to the meeting, the public comes to the meeting, and nothing is. These are often by right developments, so the public really doesn't have any. They can speak, but the developer doesn't have to make any changes. So I would say that we should, keep the 10,000 square foot site threshold for the signs and raise the meeting threshold to 40,000 square feet. 40,000 is more like the level where you start getting other design reviews or adjustments or something with the project anyway. So that makes more sense to have the sign only requirement go clear up to 40,000 like the staff originally proposed. Otherwise, you just have people coming to a meeting where no changes can be made, and it raises expectations, and it's not really productive most of the time. I mean, there's occasional times when it has been, and the developer still has the option of coming voluntarily, but it removes a burden and would remove a burden that was potentially slowing down the production of housing. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Christian.
Am I on? I'm on. Hi, my name is Christian Trable. I'm the chair of the Overlook Neighborhood Association that we've already heard about. I encourage you to do everything that we included in our letter. Let me just describe to you what happens in Overlook right now under the existing rules. We receive proposals from developers by certified mail. We announce these to our residents, and we always invite them to come testify at our neighborhood association meeting because people really enjoy hearing about what's going on in the neighborhood. And they know that if they come to the neighborhood association meeting, they're going to see all the development proposals that are coming up. Anything over 10,000 square feet, it's there. Under the proposed rules, they would no longer have that ability. At best, they would have posted signs. Maybe we get the email in time or the letter and have time to notify them in time for the meeting. That could be held anywhere within 2 miles of the neighborhood. From Overlook, that could be on the other side of the river. It could be in the Montgomery Park building. It's totally inaccessible to our residents. With the given range of times that's available, it could be during the Super Bowl. It could be during a Trailblazers game. Most developers, in my experience, care about the neighborhood. They want to do good projects. They send us these notifications, they come to our meetings, and they are happy to hear from neighbors and to consider the proposals. We know that they are under no requirement to make any changes. But a lot of developers are willing to tweak things once they hear from the people that live around the project and get to understand the neighborhood a little bit better. But there are some developers that aren't like that. We have at times received certified letters that were predated. And so they were dated a week earlier than they were actually sent by certified mail. And the developer tried to say, well, that's outside the 45-day range now for me to come to your meeting. To which we say, no, here's the date on the certified letter. That gives us an objective standard by which to judge these things. With regular mail, we won't have that. And we run the risk of it not arriving for who knows how many days. I mean, most of the time it'll get there in 2 or 3 days. But we've all experienced mail that arrives much later. Email, we run the risk of spam filters. So what we are requesting is that certified mail be maintained, that the threshold be lowered to 10,000 square feet for a meeting. Doesn't sound like a lot, but 15, 20,000 square feet in the middle of a residential neighborhood, especially with the residential infill policies coming up, can have a significant impact on residents. 25,000 square feet on Interstate Avenue definitely has an impact on everyone, but the smaller projects matter too, and people just want to know what's going up in the neighborhood. As mentioned, we support a neighborhood right of first refusal. The current system works for Overlook. It works for a lot of neighborhoods. You can adjust the rules and increase engagement with city residents without throwing away the current system that works in the places that it works. And finally, if you choose not to do that and put the onus on developers, 2 miles anytime they want with no restriction on how long the meeting needs to be is totally inconvenient and honestly unacceptable for residents who are sometimes elderly, sometimes handicapped, cannot get to those meetings easily. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Andres?
How do you communicate with the neighborhood association members when you do have a meeting?
Yeah, we have an email listserv. We send out a weekly email to our residents. It has, last count, 554 subscribers, households in the neighborhood. So that's a serious chunk of them, more than half. And also, we have a quarterly newspaper that we engage with residents on.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So you made a case for certified mail so you have accountability over the date it was sent. Don't you get that on the postmark in a regular piece of mail?
I suppose, but certified mail we know is going to get there in a timely manner. Regular mail, we do not have that guarantee.
Okay, thank you. The next three are David Schulhammer, Bob Gelbke, and Linda Nedekoven. And anyone else who wants to testify, please fill out a card and give it to Love. David?
I'm David Schulhammer, and I chair the Land Use Committee for the Selwood Moorland Improvement League, better known as SMILE. SMILE strongly feels that one of the few ways we can improve neighborhood development is through the neighborhood contact meeting requirement. We have had 22 contact meetings since 2015, and many of them have resulted in improved project designs that will positively impact our community for years to come. Such livability benefits as improved setbacks and landscaping, improved privacy, and modifying construction materials and design to improve compatibility with the neighborhood have resulted from these meetings. Our role as the Neighborhood Association Land Use Committee is to first facilitate communication, second to educate residents about the zoning code. And one of the activities that we have to do is sort of the unpleasant task of telling angry residents that in fact this building is a by right development and there is nothing you can do essentially to stop it. It's going to be built. And that unpleasant task falls upon our committee. So the elimination of these required collaborative planning meetings for proposed developments of less than 25,000 square feet would negatively affect the livability in our community. Since 2015, only 9 projects larger than 25,000 square feet have been issued permits in our neighborhood. We request that the development threshold to require neighborhood contact meetings be set at 10,000 square feet. Since 2015, 16 projects larger than 10,000 square feet have been issued projects in our neighborhood, which is fewer number of projects than we have contact meetings under the current rules. We recognize that this may be a low threshold for zones that allow greater density than found in our neighborhood. Setting different thresholds for different zones would be a logical and simple approach. While signs effectively provide information about a project, they do not provide an opportunity to improve project design. Contact meetings are particularly relevant in the design overlay zone, which is common in our neighborhood and, quote, promotes the conservation, enhancement, and continued vitality of areas of the city with special scenic, architectural, or cultural value. We believe that projects in the design overlay zone especially need our requested lower threshold of 10,000 square feet for a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
Yes, Chris, thanks, first of all, for pronouncing my last name correctly. It's Gelbke versus Gelpeke, Kloppe, or all those other things, too. So it's unusual and refreshing. I'm part of that group that vigorously opposed the height limitations down in River Place. And we unsuccessfully, were very unsuccessful in that effort. And part of the process was that we really didn't get the information. We, as a group, I'm talking individually, by everybody else, but it felt like the NBP capital proposal was kind of put in the back door of City Hall at the last minute, and we really didn't, as just citizens, have access to that process except for some limited public hearings. And so we kind of felt kind of left out of that. And then when the council originally voted that they agreed with us, and then after that meeting of agreement, then one of the votes was changed. And we obviously had nothing to do with that. So the political reality of that change vote is troublesome also. So, and then so it's information. We're very information driven, and we're not in the loop on this stuff there. And it's partially our fault and partially not knowing what the process is. So I'm pleased that Sarah is doing what she's doing here. That's very encouraging. Some of the wording, though, talks about the new initial contact is with the neighborhood association. Well, we're not part of that association that's around River Place. So we are in American Plaza Towers right next door, and there was a group of about 100 people that were very much involved in this thing. So that group would be disenfranchised if the focal point was just for the neighborhood, you know, capital THE kind of thing. So that troubled us, and so we thought there was a lot of things going on between the city council, NBP Capital, and GBT Architects. And we were outsiders, and we had no idea what was happening there. And all of a sudden this vote comes up there, the political vote was this, and the political reality was that. So that was all troublesome. And we're very concerned about the whole River Place, as it will change dramatically the whole riverfront. The whole thing, that's a vote that when you put 325-foot buildings down there, you put a group of 7, you totally destroy that entire block down there. And if the only official spokespeople down there is that neighborhood association, that's very, very troublesome, very bothering. So that was, we need to expand that, and I'm going to be working with Sarah more aggressively here. And when the other people come back from their summer vacations, we want to be a very active part of all this permitting, all the studies, and all that stuff too, because if we're part of it and it still goes this way, then we're part of the solution and part of the problem. But we want to monitor that as best we can. And right now, we don't know how to do that. So that's why I'm just here, and I just came for this meeting. I had no idea what I was going to do here, so here I am doing nothing. But that's just personal. I can't speak for the association, my neighborhood association, which is not, it's the adjoining one.
Okay,
I do know
Bob,
the
if you
people
could
at
wrap
River
up.
Place, and work with them, and as part of the community effort down there too, Friends of River Place, I'm a member of that too, so I'm actively involved and very concerned. So
Thank you.
thanks for your time collectively.
Linda.
Thank you. My name is Linda Nedikoven. I'm a 20-year member emeritus of the HAND board, and I'm only speaking for myself. And I mentioned my tenure with them because I've been trying for many years to make notification work and take it very seriously and want to be as inclusive and as open as possible for all involved. I think we have had a lot of similar experiences to those that David described in terms of helpful collaborations where modifications were made and buildings were better and people did not shout at each other. And some cases, obviously, people are disappointed on both sides, but we feel as though there are a lot of good things that have come out of these meetings and would like to see them continue. That said, I think, first of all, I wanted to really do a shout out for Sarah. I think she did a wonderful job on this project and has been a good listener and a great partner in trying to come up with something that's much better. I think a lot of the success of this project is going to depend on those draft appendices. And that's one place where I'm not clear. Are those administrative rules? Do they have any teeth? If they're significantly modified once something goes to council, is there some way to weigh in and tweak them still further? I think what's there is very good, but again, if it's kind of a, do it if you want to kind of approach, you're going to miss the benefits of it. So that's a concern. The signage issue, we're thrilled about that because we can't get to everybody, despite next door listservs and our listserv and websites and leafleting sometimes when something's really controversial. We don't get the word to everybody that we want to reach. So the signage is wonderful. That said, I still think there needs to be something online. The geography of some of our neighborhoods is huge. You may see a sign. You're not going to walk back to it in the rain in the wintertime to figure out when that meeting is or whatever. So I think it's really important that there's an online connection as well. I want to make sure we're coordinating with DOSA and design overlays in terms of where the thresholds land. And, again, I think perhaps different thresholds for different zones, perhaps. I really want to ask that you build an evaluation component into this. I think we're, doing some bold, good things here. And if we could step back after a year or two and sort of kind of survey the landscape and see how it's worked and see if there are things we can do to make it even better. That would be important. I can tell you a quick story. We just had, this is not planning's bailiwick, but we just had a Verizon interaction where we've got a giant new cell phone tower in the middle of Division. City tells us that Verizon was told to hold a meeting. Verizon said they did. City staff person went, not a single neighborhood person there. Little suspicious. They went ahead with the proposal anyway. Verizon built something different that was in the plans they presented to the city, but oh well, it's done. So it's really, I'm not afraid to try having developers take the lead on holding meetings. I think a lot of times the neighborhoods can really help them figure out venues and strategies for notification and everything else. But it's not so good when these things go awry. And, this is happening in real time right now with communications with the mayor's office still going on. So we've got to not let that happen.
Thank you, Linda. Love, do we have any others? Okay, last call. Anyone who'd like to testify, please come up and grab a card.
Linda's taller than me. Hi, my name is Heather Flint Shadow, and I'm an urban planner and urban designer. And for the last 5 years, I've been on the Richmond Neighborhood Association board and just retired. I've also been leading the Division Design Initiative in response to community concerns about lack of notification about projects and the desire to have a more meaningful and timely input in the process. Do I need to give you my address?
Nope, you don't need to.
So what you've just been handed out is a copy of the Richmond Neighborhood Association adopted 3-step notification community engagement process. And this process came out early because there really wasn't anything to respond to all the community concerns that we were hearing. And notification was our #1 policy recommendation in our top 10 policy recommendations for the city of Portland. That was endorsed by, I want to say, about 10 different groups. And so I wanted to highlight a couple of the areas in which there's differences from what the city code effort has undertaken. And I really want to compliment you for taking this on. It's really fantastic. I love the signage aspect of it. And I also want to compliment Sarah Wright for being very involved and a great listener and responsive to community concerns. So thank you. One of the things that is the biggest issue is that we're fortunate to have a notification trigger as part of the Main Street overlay for Division. However, what that meant was that there was no time frame, and we would have projects coming in just a few weeks before they were going in for submittal or right away. And so this 14-day time frame to have a community meeting is absolutely not enough time for there to be any significant difference. That's not a meaningful time frame for community members to have any difference, because having worked in the architecture industry, those construction drawings are done. Those changes, investments have been made by the architect and the designer. It's not fair to them, nor is it fair to the community to give them a false sense of hope that something is really going to change. So if you want something to happen in a more synergistic way, where the developer could be a hero in that story, they could put in some childcare, they could put in some other needed community service, that early time frame is really important. So our process had a suggested courtesy visit in that conceptual design phase of 90 to 100 days, and then a minimum of 60 days prior to permit submittal. That's a real sufficient amount of time. The drawings, they're still pretty far along, so it's not too onerous for the designer developer, but it's still enough time that changes could be made. So that's one piece I wanted to call your attention to. The other piece is the level of thresholds to trigger a community meeting. When you have narrow lots on all of these streetcar corridors that are 50 by 100, 5,000 square foot lots, if you have a 3-story building, that's 15,000 square feet. And so that's really a significant, even though a small building, a significant building that really has an impact to corridors that are typically 1 and 2 stories. I'd like to ask if I might have just a little more time since we've been leading this initiative.
30 seconds.
Okay. So I would encourage you to set your threshold more at around 15,000 square feet for the community meeting trigger, and 15,000 square feet or 3 stories or 5 units. So I think those would be consistent with what we've heard from the community members and what we've seen have been really significant impacts. And lastly, I would like to point you to the last 2 pieces. One of what materials to bring to a neighborhood association meeting. These are included in the appendices as advice to developers of what to bring, but really it's what the community said they needed to know to have enough context to understand the impacts of a project, to be able to understand really what the project was about. And so we have advocated as part of our top 10 policy recommendations that these also be permit submittal requirements, not just optional, but we need that information and we all need it online ideally. And the last piece that you have in your attachment is an example of how they used our template for a follow-up process. We have people come to meetings, never take a word of notes, and then just send a letter that said, we came. So we would like to make sure that there's a way to really document what they heard from the community and a formal process to follow up, which we appreciate Sarah's put in there. But there's an example of how a developer used that. So thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
Please do fill out a card for
Will
love.
do.
All right, anyone else who would like to testify? Going once, going twice. All right, the public hearing is closed. We will hold written testimony open until this Friday at 5 p.m. I believe that's the 17th at 5 p.m. So you're welcome to submit comments based on what you've heard today. This will go to work session 2 weeks from now, but we have some time. So if you want to do some initial questions or comments, we can do that. If you want to come back up, Sarah. Why don't we just go around the table with comments or questions? You want to start, Andre?
The administrative rules, are those, I mean, other people, we've had other processes that had administrative rules that have been essentially mandatory. Are these going to be that way, or are they going to be advisory?
The administrative rules, so all of the contents in the appendix, the draft sign template and the administrative rules in the handout, those are purely draft. We wanted to have something so that it would provide context and help people kind of better get their hands around it. But that will all be owned by the Bureau of Development Services to finalize and eventually adopt themselves. So just to clarify that, but it is in the code, it just says the proposed code, it says that Bureau of Development Services will create the administrative rules, and that's just about the sign template, the sign itself.
Okay, but in terms of what information they bring to the neighborhood association, it does have advice.
That's in the handouts. So that's purely supporting material, not required. And that is just a draft, again, that BDS will own, and they will make decisions about how to finalize that.
Okay, so BDS is just going to finalize what information they would advise developers to bring.
They already, for the current neighborhood contact requirement, they have a really robust handout that has a lot of great stuff in it already, and I'm sure that they will, revise that for the new requirements.
Okay, and then the requirement of notification, again, Chris said he was going to propose amendment, but is it a burden to have some kind of listserv? And I don't know what the city has currently of listservs of projects or developments or whatever, but is that a high standard to have developers, when they send that notice to the neighborhood association, they also send it to a listserv, and it's kind of public, because it is public at the point that they send it to a neighborhood association.
Yeah, in the current proposal, in the proposed draft, it would have the same process that happens now, where that information comes to the city when the application is submitted.
Mm-hmm.
We were looking at proposing a staff amendment that would add the Bureau of Development Services to the list of organizations that get the early notice. So that's something we were considering, and that's also seems like in the hopper for a proposed amendment. But
if it goes to the BDS, I mean, is it also, are they going to post it somewhere, or does I guess I'm trying to get to, is it going to become a way to get more individuals and people outside of the neighborhood association, is to have potentially the city being able to post that same information? And I'm just trying to see if it does go to BDS, which is a great idea, are they just going to hold on to it or are they looking to do something?
So BDS is revising all of their sort of online, their systems for taking in permits, and they're overhauling all of that. And I don't know, Cassie, if you want to speak to that at all, but so they're working with BTS on how they do that. And I think that this question of how do you surface information and make it available to more people to choose to access is going to be a big part of what they're working on. But it's something that a lot of people want. And you had asked a question about the DCL partners, I believe, at the briefing. I did check back with them to make sure that my memory was correct. And in their April meeting, they did say they do not want land use notices. They feel like that would be an overwhelming and confusing avalanche of stuff. But they would definitely be interested in that kind of subscription sort of approach. So did you guys want to?
Hi, I'm Kara Fioravanti with Bureau Development Services. At this point, we're obviously supportive of the public notification. We are in the middle of our POPs programming, which is online permitting. And what would be best is if this online notification could wait to see how POPs is going to be organized and constructed so that it could be part of that system. Right now, we don't have it. We have some concerns from the Bureau of Technology Services because they haven't created this system yet. I think the timing of POPs is spring of 2019, so this could almost tie into that.
So, Kara, if I could follow up on that point, since this occurs before the application, there's no permit number yet, right? So is POPs going to be able to track things that don't have permit numbers, or should this exist as a separate function?
That's another challenge we're thinking through right now. It wouldn't have a number, and also some of these parcels wouldn't even have an address yet. So how these requests get organized is another question.
Okay. Sorry, Andre, I interrupted your time. Okay, thank you. Teresa.
Okay, so I don't recall seeing if there was an evaluation component, you know, go for this long, take a look and see what's going on. Is it in there somewhere?
We don't, I mean, that wouldn't be something that we would put in code. I think in terms of whether it's good to evaluate changes to the code, I think that it is a good idea to evaluate what goes into the code, but it wouldn't be something that we would write into the proposal.
Okay, so your suggested time frame, though, just from a process perspective, is a year long enough, or is that not long enough to know anything?
I mean, I think that would really be a BDS question, because a lot of this really falls on the shoulders of BDS to implement, and so questions about kind of enforceability and procedure and evaluation is going to be something that they're going to own, and so I'm going to punt it to them. Can I do that?
Sure. It's a good question. I haven't thought about that. It seems like 18 months might give a little more breathing room to see a project go through the full system. I think it potentially depends on what your timing requirements are and how far in advance the notification has to happen. Did you say right now it's within 14 days? But I know I heard testimony about 60 days. So the longer that gets, I think you want to have more time to see several projects go through.
Right. And then just aside from the actual number for the threshold, which I'm sure we'll work on in work session.
Eli?
Well, thanks, especially for those who turned out on a wonky topic. This is a really important one, so we know where we have neighborhood leaders showing up. I had one question for BDS is just there's some cost of implementing this beyond just checking a certified letter, whether there's any idea if this is a permit cost that gets passed through to builders to do the review part of it. If you have any idea, like a few $100 or a few $1,000 or where that would be?
I would say it depends on how much work is needed to, how automated could this system be so that there is very little staff time spent on this? Because this is all work prior to any fees coming in. So no, we haven't thought about where those fees would be, where the burden would go to. But if it could be automated, that would be ideal within our POP system.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously you can't collect fees on there's no permit applied for. And when you do collect it, you probably have to cover the cost of all the ones that didn't come in too. Just
Exactly.
because so just it'd be nice to hear if there's any big implications on the cost to development to get that. I'm intrigued by the idea of neighborhoods having the first right of refusal to hold the location if the neighborhood meeting hood location meets the requirements of the zoning statute, meaning accessible space, within certain timeframes and hours. This comes partly from me going to lots of neighborhood association meetings just as a resident and finding that I learn stuff through the meetings when there's land use stuff on the agenda. And if land use stuff is always off the agenda because it's held somewhere else, that's less reason to go to neighborhood association meetings. And it's also important, of course, that the outreach for those meetings is not just through the neighborhood association because their lists are insufficient to get, and the sign helps with that. So I'm intrigued by that idea. And the concern items I have that I want us to discuss a little bit is one, having some way of delineating, once you put a sign up there, whether it's by right or discretionary, different color, something, so people have information on that. The template doesn't yet show it. I understand BDS has grappled with this and doesn't have a solution yet, but I think we should have a solution to that. And the other is just understand, the hesitancy I have about this is it could take a project that is by right, except someone screws up something on the notice, and suddenly there's an opportunity to obstruct the project based on a Title 33 complaint. Someone uses the wrong font size, doesn't post it on the fronting street, which is actually a common court. I mean, there's various ways that someone could try to needle in on this code to perhaps never succeed in it. But if people just hate a project, they would have this avenue to look at to try and block it or slow it down. And I think that's. So I guess I generally support the layout. And I actually just had lunch with a friend who has projects in a city just east of Portland, unknown, which apparently has an awful process for public notification that I'm very happy that what we're doing here is way better than that. Thanks.
Thanks, Eli. Andres.
Also interested in the right of the neighborhood being able to have first shot at meetings. I like the idea of an online system. I understand staff's concern and think, if at all possible, it should be automated so it's not staff trying to figure out how to send conglomerate emails to people who are signed up in neighborhood associations. I think it would be useful to have that information readily accessible to anyone who wants to sign up, echoing the idea that the list we have, and especially the neighborhood associations have, is incomplete. To Andre's questions and the response that the current direction for BDS staff is to develop administrative rules about the sign, I'd be interested in having administrative rules that go beyond the scope of the sign. I think that if we're talking about having required components or suggested required components for meetings, that should be codified in administrative rule. So we have clarity and also the weight of administrative rule to ensure compliance.
Thank you, Michelle.
Just some general questions about sort of the mechanics of how we see this working. So if I'm the developer, do I go to the city and they have official lists of what the email is for neighborhood association, for the district neighborhood coalition, the business association, so there's not a debate later on about whether or not I sent something to the right parties?
Yeah, so there's the ONI database has that information, and BDS already has these lists. These requirements are already in effect that you contact the business association, neighborhood association, and school district. So BDS is currently grappling with that, but yes, it is something
they have
that
the
BDS
official
have. Yeah.
emails. And then if I want a member of city staff to come, because I'm concerned about the idea of people think they are doing more than providing helpful suggestions, that they think that this is something that isn't allowed by code. So is there any opportunity now for staff to be invited to attend? I mean, I think, part of it, if you end up having to do a land use review, there's going to be a different, potentially a hearing at that point. But it does seem to be an opportunity for things to get testy.
Yeah. We are not comfortable requiring that staff attend this. That would be
that
would be tough. But especially if we're building in the requirement that the Bureau of Development Services be included in the list of sort of getting this notification that there is going to be a meeting happen, that would be an opportunity if that was something that BDS chose to do in the future, where that could be just by getting notified, it opens the door for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you post the sign. What happens if the sign comes down or is taken down? How does that sort of thing get?
So the admin rules, as they're just drafted now, it would just require that they be reposted. So
Okay.
that the sign be put back up as soon as BDS became aware of it.
Okay, and then just sort of a general comment to think about. When I was reading through the policy statement, it talks about the community in a number of places, and I would think about saying members of the community just because community sort of struck me as this one limited thing, and we do want to reach more than just the neighborhood associations or the regular participants in these events.
Thank you, Michelle. So I have a couple of questions for data that would help our work session, I think, in a couple weeks. And then I have some comments. So first question, do we have basically a breakdown of how many projects of what size we see in a year or 2 year period so we could sort of see where the thresholds fall in the continuum of projects? I think that could help us. I think the point was raised in testimony. Are there size triggers in DOZA that we should be thinking about synchronizing with so we have some consistency about where we set those trigger points? And then on the question of evaluation, we wouldn't put that in the zoning code, but that could be in the implementing ordinance that adopts the zoning code, right? So council could give direction and we could make a recommendation on what that direction should be, right? That's a feasible process to cause that to happen.
I don't want to say yes or no without consulting, but in theory.
So I'll throw that out there. So just some general comments. Having been a neighborhood association board member, I think Linda and I started our neighborhood service about the same time. I got out before she did. That it is valuable to have the opportunity for input even when a project is by right. That collaboration can and does happen and has value even where there's no statutory requirement that you listen to somebody. Sometimes they bring good ideas anyway. To the gentleman who testified about River Place, certainly appreciate your concern about that. I'll point out that was a legislative project. There was no building permit in play at that point, and this process would have had no effect on that. And people get to lobby for legislative projects in the public sphere any way they want. So appreciate your desire to be involved, and this is a tool to be involved at a later point in the process, but it wouldn't have addressed that particular concern. And obviously there are people other than neighborhood associations who care about this stuff, and that's why the amendment I'm trying to work on, and I've been through one round with staff, they didn't really like my language, I'm going to try again, is that we have an open data ordinance and an open data program. This should be an open data set, which gives lots of people the opportunity to slice it and dice it in different ways and do different things with it. So while I hope the city will be proactive about some of the ways that people might get email, if we make it an open data set, then other people can try their opinions on how it should be distributed, and we can create different opportunities. So I'll be continuing to work with staff between now and work session to come up with something that hopefully is both workable and meets the need. Last call for thoughts. All right, Sarah, thank you very much. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, and if somebody could let the RIP staff know that we're ready for them way early, and we'll take a brief break until...
I actually have something to fill the break if we need something.
Okay, very good.
He doesn't know that he does now, I think. If Dick, you could come up. So Dick Benner, who some of you know, worked for Thousand Friends, worked for Metro, worked for many others. Anyway, he has been involved in what we would call a middle housing project, and I thought he might be some inspiration for the continuation of our discussion. So I told him I'd give him 60 seconds to do a little ad about what's going on there and what he's been working on.
Might even give him a few more. Dick, welcome.
Thank you. Most of you know the Ankeny Street Laurelhurst neighborhood. Eli certainly knows it because he actually gave us some good counsel early in the development of this concept. So what we wanted to do is an infill project close to transit, close in a walkable community. We wanted it to be a net zero development, meaning that we would, with photovoltaics and a highly insulated building, be able to generate more electricity than we use. And co-housing. At my age, it was going to feel really comfortable to us to have people living there who we could grow old with. So aging in place is one of the concepts that we built into the design. So it's called Ankeny Row. It got some attention in the media 3 years ago or so when it was in concept and planning and in construction. And so one partner and I thought that it's a good story to tell, and it's a very promising kind of housing type, and we wrote a book about it, which is here, and it's finally out after long last. Susan has a copy of it. I'm not plugging it or anything. We just wanted to get it out to as many people as possible because we think it's a very promising idea. One particular thing I would note about it, when we were trying to find a publisher for the book, one publisher who rejected us said, you know, the project that you've built is kind of expensive. And of course, she was right. It was expensive. And it caused us to rethink the book, and we added a chapter and did research on our own and with the design build firm about it to see what we could have done to cut costs and yet accomplish all the objectives we set out for ourselves, such as aging in place, co-housing, and net zero, highly energy efficient. And so we have a chapter in here about how to do that, and we concluded we could have built the same 1,500 square foot townhouse for $100,000 less than it cost us to build it. So it's a great model. There are 6 units. It fits right into Ankeny. You know, we all like the density because of all the things that density brings to a community. Better transit, better retail. I mean, it just makes a community livable. But what's interesting about what's happening on Ankeny, from my perspective, is across the street are going to be 97 units. That project is underway. And yet there's a string of 3 middle density developments, including Ankeny Row and a couple by Colab. And it just adds so much nice diversity of different kinds. Eye diversity, for example. And people just feel more comfortable mixing that in with the larger projects.
I assume it's not a coincidence that you put it on a neighborhood greenway.
We have a bike locker full of bikes.
Okay. Sure.
How much would it have changed your cost? Don't have to answer this right now. If you built it on land zoned R5 rather than, what's the current zoning?
CM.
CM, in terms of just the land value. Because I think that development would work in many different places in Portland, but I'm guessing that the land value where it's sitting on is worth a heck of a lot of money, and that could be one of the big drivers of the cost.
We did cover that in the chapter. We, not through any great wisdom on our part, it's just circumstance, we bought it during the recession. And a year later, the people building the apartment across the street offered us twice what we paid for it. But we knew we had the site that we wanted for our development, so that didn't mean anything to us. But sure, you know, it doesn't have to be exactly this size, and it's just conceptually, I think it can fit in many different neighborhoods and different zoning types where it's allowed. So as I leave, let me just say that because you're members of the commission and you do such important work, if any of you wants to come out and take a look at it, I'd be happy to show you around. Susan knows how to get in touch with me, so I'd welcome you to do it.
Thank you, Dick. Thanks for making us stop on your book tour. All right, we will take a 5-minute break and then we'll get into RIP. Thank you. let you lead us through what the latest changes are.
Just a little bit. Good afternoon. My name is Sandra Wood. I'm with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and this is the another work session for the residential infill project. And the topic today is narrow lots. We were going to also discuss cottage clusters, which is was carried over from the last meeting, but in talking to Commissioner Katz this morning, she preferred to delay that until a future meeting when she could definitely be here. So we will do that at our next meeting. So today we'll concentrate on the third topic of the residential info project, narrow lots, which is, I think, exciting. I hope you're excited to be getting to the third topic. For those who are not in the audience today but want to follow along on our live stream or want to look at the materials on the website, on the screen right now shows where the PSC materials are available on the website. And you can look under documents and resources and look for the Planning and Sustainability Commission materials, and they're by date there. I do want to remind the Commission that in our first discussion about this project, we discussed what the PSC's goals were for the project, so that you could be aiming towards the same goal as you were proposing amendments. And this shouldn't look familiar to you, but it's basically generalized project goals of equitable benefits and costs, more housing options, and less expensive options. Today, with the narrow lot subject, I do want to bring to your attention under the equitable benefits and costs that there's lower displacement, and then the second one is increased home ownership. The narrow lots provide an opportunity for increased home ownership, so that's among other things, that's one of the main goals here. Again, the project proposals, we've talked about scale of houses, housing options, and now we're talking about narrow lots. We had slated to discuss this for about 2 hours. There are 3 proposals. I won't read them out, 9, 10, and 11, spending most of our time on whether some of these historically narrow lots should be rezoned or not. And then they're followed by some other recommendations that were kind of outside the project scope, so they don't have numbers. Before I start with this, I suppose I should introduce everybody else who's up here with me. Joe Zender is the chief planner for the city of Portland, and Shannon Buno, who is our code editor. And in the audience, we have Kristen Cooper and hopefully Sean Williams soon, in case we have questions about implementation and then details. And they're from the Bureau of Development Services. So narrow lots, this is hopefully, we've covered this before, but we just wanted to share a primer. They're basically, historically narrow lots were platted before the city had zoning, and they're narrower than the standard lots. They're typically 25 by 100 feet deep. The lots are already divided, or in other words, there's already lot lines there, so they don't need to go through a land division like a big tract would have to go for a subdivision. They have substandard lot sizes and widths for the R5 zone, and most of them are in the R5 zone in the city. And currently, we have a policy that if the lot is vacant, it has been vacant for 5 years, then it could be buildable. That was the last council decision back in the day. So issue number 1 that we have, and we do have our worksheet today that we'll be following through. So we're on page 3 of our worksheet, is to rezone some historically narrow lots from R5 to R2.5. This map shows 3 things actually. The orange shows the existing R2.5 zoning in the city. We are not changing that with this project, those properties. The purple shows the properties that staff proposed to rezone from R5 to R2.5, and the gray lots that have where you can see the lot lines. I don't know if this shows, yeah, right up in here, you can see all of these are not, are historically narrow lots that staff is proposing not to rezone. All in total, our proposal is that we estimate there's about 14,000 tax lots, and we're proposing to rezone about half of them with this proposal. What that means on the ground is the following. The top diagram shows the existing block. The current R5 rules allows properties that have been vacant to be redeveloped upon. So for example, look at lot number 4 here, what's demarked 4, it's vacant, so we can have a house on it. These 2 6 for lot 6 also can have houses on them, so that's what the current rules allow. By rezoning them to R2.5, we would allow those and others to be infilled. So that's what it means on the ground. The proposal also comes with it for properties that are not rezoned to R2.5, that existing vacant lot provision cannot be taken advantage of. So for example, these 2 lot 6s would not be able to be developed with those 2 houses. But lot 4 would be. We've codified an exception that if this lot is not owned with anything in common, then that person would have development rates. So that's what the difference is on the ground.
And I'm sorry, could you go back?
Mm-hmm.
In the R5 proposal, what's happening on lot 7?
On lot 7, they could do a corner lot.
That's the corner.
Swivel. Yeah, they could swivel the property line and do corner lot there for attached houses. So this is what the proposal is. I think we're all hopefully familiar with this map. And in our worksheet, we identified 3 potential amendments or 2 other options. Our proposal was to rezone historically narrow lots within the 2 to 3 blocks from centers and corridors. Like I said, about 7,000 tax lots. One amendment proposed by Commissioner Bortolaso was to rezone only those adjacent to corridors, so a smaller area that would be less than 7,000 square foot lots. And the third was to rezone all historically narrow lots to R2.5 unless they're in a natural hazard area. So that is about 14,000 tax lots. So those are the 3 options, and I'll put it back onto the map here.
And if there's appropriate time, I'd like to suggest a change to the last of those 3 options.
And that was your amendment you're talking about modifying, so why don't you go ahead?
Okay, sure. Well, I've been gravitating, especially based on staff's, even the proposed draft and where the Planning Commission has taken it since then, which would allow in single-family zones to have mid-block duplexes or 3 or 4 units. The difference between R2.5 and R5 is really the size of the building, what FAR is allowed, because you can do 2 units side by side in either one of those zones. And so that's made me much more comfortable with the staff proposal on this one, to say that we would rezone the areas to 2.5 that are close to centers and corridors, because that's where we can have more massing, more installation. And outside those areas, though, we've got large parts of the city where, like in purple areas on this map, we're already proposing right now that you can build attached townhomes on those lots. And so my amendment to an alternate approach to number 3 would be to say that in those areas, you're constrained by R5 rules in terms of how tall the house could be, what its FAR would be, setbacks, all governed by R5, which is exactly the rule that would apply to any other house on that block. But you could resurrect that property line to create attached townhomes. So the form would be exactly what would be allowed anywhere else in the R5 neighborhood, but the ownership would be allowed to be split using that segregation. So I'm going to toss that out there as sort of a maybe a compromise. And for those who've looked ahead to another amendment I had in there about being able to drop property lines in all situations, I've been convinced to drop that one. So this is not heading towards that direction. This is like saying, well, let's preserve it just in the lot segregation situations.
Staff have a reaction to that?
So is it safe to say that this amendment would be to rezone the purple lots to R2.5? Oh, and don't even do that.
Be really clear.
Keep
Whenever
them
I hear
all.
rezone, I hear, but the way things are written right now, rezone means you can build more. So I'm proposing you cannot build more. You're stuck with the R5 entitlement in terms of FAR,
FAR.
floor area, height, all R5. But you can put a lot in there. Does that make sense?
You can confirm.
So I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
Like the idea of rezoning versus, at this point, you can already build based on staff proposal, 2 townhomes on any one of those lots.
So you get a very small R5 lot, right? And
Right.
Does that create any particular anomalies by having a small R5 lot?
Well, it continues to erode what R5 means.
R5 would start meaning more how big can you
How
build
big.
something versus how many can you build on it. That would be correct.
Which would be kind of like where we're going with the multi-dwelling zones. I
And the
guess
single family zones, frankly, I mean, already we're having R5 doesn't mean one house per lot. It hasn't since we did ADUs. But yeah, I get that there's a what does R5 mean calls into question. And I guess what I'm seeing, even from the staff proposal and from what the PAC has done with it since then, with straw votes, is that R5 now means more how big can it be? And R2.5 means you can build bigger. So the idea behind this proposal is to say you only get to go bigger on these historic lot line situations if they're close to a corridor. But if they're in a neighborhood where you can build anywhere in that neighborhood the same size, why not let someone use that lot?
So to make sure I understand that, with R5 you get 0.5 base FAR, given where we're at, if I recall, whereas with 2.5 you get 0.7. So you're saying you get to divide the lot in half, get the small lot, but you still only have 0.5 base FAR. Is that right?
That would be right. The one caveat is that you can earn your way up. You get
right.
You know, you can earn in any of these we've proposed. You can earn up, but that's the exact logic of it. Yes.
Andre,
can you go back to where you're showing the houses? So in the one that you were saying, the current 5 rules, you would be changing, if I understand this, the lot that you said you couldn't build on in the R5 zone, you could build on just under the R5 rules. Is that correct? As I understand it, the lot that Sandra had said you couldn't build
which lot
on.
is it again?
what number lot are you referring to, Andre?
I think it's 2 that you can't build on, but you under this you could build on it, but you would be under the R5 rules. Is that correct?
On the top one, number 2.
Yeah. So you couldn't build on that one under what's being proposed, but what you're proposing, you could build on it, but under only the R5 rules for Massey.
I think under what's proposed right now, you could build on the 2 lot, but you couldn't confirm that property line down the middle.
Yeah.
Because under what's currently on the staff
Is that
proposal
right?
is you can do a duplex
Right.
in a mid-block situation. So all I'm saying is you could build that number 2, but if you build it as attached homes, you know, with the 2-hour separator and all that, then you could bring the line back. So the same structure you'd be allowed to build, but you'd be able to separate the ownership for homeownership opportunities. I mean, one of the reasons builders, I think, like these lots is because they can do first-time homebuyer housing. And a lot of first-time homebuyers don't want to deal with a condo association. You know, have to maintain that forever. It's a way to get and so this is a way of providing that homeownership opportunity without layering on condos and without building any bigger than what's otherwise allowed in that zone.
And you're in this idea, just so we all understand, we're not changing the orange because those are already R2.5. But the purple and all the other historically narrow lot lines would fall into this new zone. Or just
well,
the
the
purple.
purple you're proposing to rezone to 2.5.
But
right?
Eli's amendment is not to do that. Is that correct?
Well, this would be
S- maybe-
2.5, and then this affects the rest, or would this be all of the rezones?
I guess I need to understand the nuance. So is the orange the 7,000 lots?
No, orange
No,
is
okay.
already R2.5. We just
Okay.
provided it here for context.
Okay, so this doesn't touch the orange
it
area
does
at
not
all.
touch the
No,
orange area at all.
orange area means R2.5 entitlement, which means 0.7 FAR.
Correct.
Sorry. So I guess so. Is the purple on here the?
What staff is proposing to rezone to R2.5, the ones that are closest to centers and corridors.
So I'm continuing to support the staff proposal for that to make those
Okay.
R2.5.
Okay.
And
So
then for the
taller
ones that are not
35
colored
foot
in at
high
all,
buildings, and the ones that are not covered in have this new idea applied to those.
correct.
So one of the reasons that we did not propose to rezone them all to R2.5 was because of the pace of change. As you can see from this map, in North Portland, that area is disproportionately affected by these narrow lots, and we have seen these narrow lots, develop at a greater rate. Certainly before the vacant lot provision was put in place in 2003. So because of that concern that this area would start changing drastically really quickly, we narrowed it down. And that's what we explained in our staff report.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So infrastructure-wise, if you split the lot, do I have to have my own water pipes?
Yes.
Is there an implication for the integrity of the city's system the more tap-ins you have or something?
I think we'd have to talk to our colleagues that came a couple meetings ago to talk to them about that, because a rezone is a different animal for them.
I can say I've talked to the nonprofits that have done these corner plexes, and even if you don't divide the lot, the Water Bureau will still let you have separate service hookups for each home. So if the city allows a duplex on a lot, at least based on past precedent, they'll allow you to pay money to have a separate water meter for each unit on that duplex lot. In practice, sometimes developers don't like doing that because the Water Bureau charges a nice fee for doing each one of those hookups. But at least that's my understanding is that even if you don't divide a lot, you can still pay the Water Bureau for extra hookups.
Can I?
Yeah.
Just if I can, so that part of what's behind the staff's proposal, as I'm thinking about it, draws from where we left this issue of the ability to develop the underlying lots at the last time we touched this issue. Which Sandra, could you go back to the street views? So, staff's proposal is built on this principle that you zone it for what the pattern of development that you want to see. Since we sort of even crafted that and put it on the table, what you can develop even on a R5 lot, a non-skinny lot, has evolved a lot with the commission's evaluation. So that's a big change. However, the ability to do the lot division, we were concerned would, as Sandra said, increase the likelihood, increase the likelihood that structures would be demolished. The good news would be, under the proposal that Eli's put on the table, they would be replaced by two structures, but it increases the likelihood of that change. Okay, so and I don't have creation of two lots there is a sort of inherent value increase to the property, but I don't know if it's really enough to make that big a change. But that was our thinking in part. Could you go back to the map about where they're distributed? So where these skinny lots are, these underlying lot lines are, is an accident of history of how these were subdivided at a time. They're concentrated in certain parts of town. And when we tried to get this through before, when we had this discussion, even around the concept plan, I believe, there was concern that that pattern of development with individual structures on individual lots should be looked at as an area plan, and you should look at those specific places and say, this is the best place for that pattern of development. Like, that's how we would traditionally do that. The second thing was make it truth in zoning to the extent that that matters, but that there's predictability or legibility of what you could expect to be developed on the place. And then the third thing was we suspected, based on what we were hearing from our focus group, from our committee, that the ability to create the small lot and have fee simple ownership was really attractive and was going to accelerate the pace of development of those lots. So we split it in this way with the logic around where you're closer to our centers and corridors, you get the ability to divide the lot and go ahead and build. And when you're farther from it, we're going to use that closeness to the center as our determination that it's a less appropriate place for that pattern of development. So that's how, and then what we've done through this discussion, what y'all have done, is made that even less of a restriction on the amount of units in the place. It's a different restriction on the form, because on all of those lots, since you could be doing duplexes and triplexes and currently four flats. So it's about the pace, it's about the skinny versus the larger structure or the consolidated structure, and it's about the distribution of these is the big difference. So when you were asking for staffs, I think our reasoning for coming up with this proposal still holds, even with the circumstances that have changed with you all being open to mid-block triplexes and four-unit projects.
Okay. Andres.
So I'm going to try to wade through this. If I'm understanding Eli's proposal, then the way I'm seeing this is that the pattern of development would be the same, because you would take these R5 lots that allow a duplex by right, and you would say build the exact same thing. So it wouldn't be a different density as you see in 2.5 in the purple and the orange zones. So we'd see the same things being built, and the only difference I'm seeing is the lot line. So you drop a lot line, it would mean having 2 water sewer hookups, but that's the only difference that I'm seeing in these gray zones. And I think we can talk a lot about what that means. I think that it's definitely possible that it will be an attractive model, but it also will be a model of fee simple homeownership, which nonprofits have told us repeatedly is beneficial for people who have high barriers to entering homeownership. I also think that more importantly, for consistency, this commission has decided not to exclude areas as an anti-displacement tool. We've had lots of conversations about displacement, and what I have interpreted the votes on the commission to mean is that the commission did not buy the idea that we should leave areas of the city out to prevent displacement. Whether that's the right decision or not, I think, again, is a separate conversation. But I think the votes that we have taken have said that leaving an area out isn't our method for preventing displacement. And I want to take that as an opportunity to, again, reiterate the need for anti-displacement programming, for funding anti-displacement efforts. We know what areas of the city are going to get hit harder. We heard it through the original conversation. We're hearing it again now through this proposal. And if council does not support and pass anti-displacement programming, then the effect of this is going to happen whether it's an R5 zone or whether you allow a lot division through Eli's proposal. And so I guess I'm not seeing the big distinction there, because it seems like if someone's going to want to take those gray lots and build duplexes on them and demolish the existing house, that the existence of a lot division isn't going to significantly sway the math in that case. I'm not a developer, so I could be wrong.
I don't see anybody leaping up, so let me pose a thought question. So what I hear staff saying is the ability to divide ownership makes redevelopment more likely even when building form opportunity is held constant, right? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, we believe it affects the value of the development in the market.
And when we look at the fact that you can do narrow or attached houses on corner lots, going through a land division, there are very few of those that go through a land division versus the ones that can just redo their lot line, confirm their lot line.
Right. So it seems to be one of the criticisms of this project has been that, well, it won't be used enough to make a difference anyway. So this is one of the dials where we can make it be used more often. but at the same time, you're telling us it might be used so often that it would trigger more political backlash, is sort of the way I'm hearing this. So in my own thinking, I'm torn between an opportunity to make the creation of more housing units and housing options happen faster versus making it so fast that it becomes unacceptable. And I don't know how to balance that. So.
I just weigh in quickly that, and we're making that decision based on some random historical decision that was made, in the 30s, instead of choosing where we're going to do these things. And I think that's been staff's point a little bit, just like, this may be a great idea. We're moving fast on all of this. What if, Eli wants to have that discussion, which we've talked about a lot. It's like, okay, so what happens a year from now? What's staff working on? Maybe it's where else does this make sense? And should it be in a place that was historically picked in the 30s because that's when it was platted?
So maybe let's change the subject a little bit and circle back to this. So the other end of the spectrum of options is Commissioner Bortolozzo's amendment, which would tighten this in closer to the corridors, right? So maybe staff would spend a minute talking about how tightly you constructed that envelope and what the rationale was versus what Commissioner Bortolozzo is suggesting.
And I believe, no, is he on the right? No. Yeah. I have not spoken to Commissioner Bortolozzo about it. When we had conversations with the public about all of these areas, and we had originally, didn't we propose to rezone them all? Everything that was in the A overlay, we proposed to rezone them all. And based on public feedback, we narrowed it down because of those communities, some communities members saying that it would be a lot of change. I guess I don't have much to say about Commissioner Bortolozzo's proposal. The 2 to 3 blocks from the center corner seemed reasonable to us when we were drawing the line. And we worked with our district liaisons really closely on this, and they know their communities and know their areas, and drew the line using their on the ground knowledge.
So are we interpreting adjacent to corridors, meaning just lots that are on corridors?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And any other commission members have thoughts on that particular topic?
I'm just confused here. It seems 1 and 2 is pretty straightforward. It's about development. How close do you want it to a corridor? And that seems, do you want it really right on the corridor or back into the neighborhoods, 1 or 2, a couple blocks? What Eli's proposing, and this is my confusion with staff, we've gone from 2 to 4 duplexes and triplexes in the middle of a block of a neighborhood. I'm confused of why we're even hesitating about this, because we've already approved more development than this is going to come. The disruption's already there. To say the neighborhood's going to be upset, if they're not upset at 3, they ought to be happy at 2. I mean, it's just not, it's like, well, let's move on. I mean, we've said we're not going to talk about gentrification and displacement. There's nothing to talk about here, in my view. It's, I like what Eli said, is try to control the scale, but if you're going to do them and you've already disrupted the neighborhood at 4 units potential on every block, this doesn't seem like a disruption at all.
So you're endorsing option 3, is that what I hear?
Yeah, we've already gone there.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Sure.
As part of my hesitation here is, I guess in a way, tied exactly to what you're saying. Why don't we just rezone everything then? Because we've created a situation where there's really no difference.
You've done that. I mean, we've done that.
Well, then if it's the truth in zoning, then we shouldn't be talking A overlays. We should be saying we're making all the R5s R2.5.
Well, it's a
So
difference of 0.2 FAR, so it's not.
I think that what's happened is the difference between R2.5 and R5 has changed from even from the staff's proposal to the Planning Commission. The difference is how big something can be, how big the structure can be, much more so than how many units are allowed inside of it. So there is a difference between R5 and R2.5. And a couple times staff has asked me, well, why don't you just rezone to R2.5? It seems like you're doing it. I don't want to upzone to R2.5 because for me what that means is you can suddenly build a lot bigger. And I don't want to support that. But within the R5, so for me, R5 now means you're capped at 2,500 square feet unless you're on your way up, which is a lot smaller than allowed today. And if you're going to be capped in that manner, that's really what R5 is, sort of like a neighborhood size home. It's smaller than most homes getting built right now. If we carry that, if that's what R5 starts meaning, how big can it be? I think that addresses a lot of concerns we've heard from neighbors. And then the next level of question is what can you do in that? We've already talked about unit mix inside that. This is more of a question of ownership methods within that volume, but still within the volume is really important to me. So I've continued to resist the idea that let's just rezone to R2.5. No. To me now, R2.5 means a lot bigger building, which should be preserved for certain areas that are close to corridors. So that's where I think that Chris has hit it on the head, that this really is a discussion of, in my mind, I think this is sort of a political, I'm not sure what the politics are on this, but policy-wide, I think it's pretty good as a compromise between having neighborhood scale development and for these randomly located lots, which were at one point platted 25 feet wide a long time ago, and some people still will raise their batons and say, it was a 25-foot lot. That's what I bought here. Why can't I use it? Please. It's a way of giving them something. And still respecting the scale of every other house on that block, whether or not it's. So I think it's a good policy compromise. Whether it's good politics, I don't know. But that's where I came to on it. But I don't need this to. I mean, this could just be a straw poll where that range votes. So I'm curious to hear. And in terms of like the how fast does it go question, I think the issue is more whether it's a 1 month process or a 1 year process. Because a partition can take a year, maybe as fast as 9 months, maybe as long as a year and a half. And a lot of segregation is a month or two. So I think that's really, in terms of the market, it's which of those processes you're going down, especially for the for-profit builders, the cost of money is enough that's a big difference, whether you're taking 1 month or a year.
And I don't think it's just a matter of time. Obviously, it's a matter of cost and time, but it's also a matter of what the city has the ability to review. When we're doing a land division, all the infrastructure bureaus are involved. They take a look at it and say your water lines, sewer lines, your sidewalk needs to be extended in front of both houses, whether you have an existing house or not. And so we get infrastructure improvements. With a lot confirmation, we don't. The infrastructure improvements are limited to the new house that's being built. So it is definitely a matter of time, but it's the land division process allows for a public notice, so people get notice, and I don't know where we're landing on neighborhood contact, so, but the infrastructure bureaus have some teeth that they can require sidewalk improvements, for example.
And in this example, though, you could build a duplex by right on the house, on the 5,500-foot lot right next door, exact same structure.
Right.
With no involvement in no partition process. So I think that it's
That's
true.
why this is the third topic and not the second topic, because you can't answer this topic without having answered the housing choice conversation that we've had.
Jeff, were you wishing to say something? I thought I saw you lean.
Oh, I'm still listening, coming in late. I just want to clarify, Eli, your proposal is simply we rezone all historic R25s. Is there a condition or caveat to that?
I modified it.
Okay.
It would be to support the staff option number 1. So to rezone the areas that are close to centers and corridors, and outside the centers and corridors, set the entitlement to be exactly what you're allowed in an R5 zone. So smaller FAR, the same FAR that you would be allowed in the R5 zone, but allow someone to segregate that lot with the historic property line. So if you're basically on that, just 50 by 100 foot lot, you could build a 2,500 square foot structure that would actually be two 1250 townhomes side by side. You could do that anywhere in the city in an R5 lot, but in these particular zones, you could actually put a property line in there, do a lot segregation, and sell them separately. Does that make sense? It's giving you a little extra. It's giving you a little extra tool in the toolbox if you're building in one of these historic areas. You can build the same size volume, same height limit, same size limit, same setbacks, all out of the R5 zone, the underlying zone. But you can drop a property line in there that used to be there.
But isn't there a minimum dimension requirement to develop in an R5 zone?
You can already do a duplex in an R5 zone under staff's proposal.
But if I have my historic 2,500 square foot lot that's 2,500 square feet and it's zoned R5, it's too small to develop in an R5.
So what he's proposing is that we write in an exception to that.
And
If you
says-
have a previously platted lot, or your lot was platted before 1979.
And what does that exception say exactly? I can
You
do a
can look
lot-
to the corner duplex provision, which has exactly the exception you need in there, which says that if you have a 50 by 100 foot lot corner duplex and you want to do attached townhomes on there, the minimum lot size is the minimum lot size of our 2.5 zone. So it's a way of basically saying that you can. I'm looking at you, Shannon, to see if I'm getting this right. Am I getting it right? That the minimum lot sizes would become the minimum lot size of the R2.5.
Except that in this case, you'd be confirming the existing lot line. So you'd have two 25 by 100s. Right. But
So how is that different than rezoning it to R2.5?
Because that's the key thing.
Because what?
You get 0.5 FAR, not 0.7. You keep
So
the
what
form
that
down.
does is, one of the values I heard of these R25 lots, and yes, they're somewhat random, there was not a conscious planning decision, but they exist. And they're a fact of life in the city of Portland, those are the lots where we're getting affordable first-time home ownership. And I think, to me, that was persuasive. We have this supply of land use, of lots of a size that are being built at an affordable level, and we're going to lose that for half these lots, even under your proposal, I think, as I'm understanding your proposal, Eli. So
My proposal would allow you to create the lots and sell them separately, but it wouldn't allow you to build as big as the R2.5 zone.
we would undermine a lot of those first-time single-family houses, which probably would be bigger in many cases.
No, I don't think that's Eli's intent. I mean,
No,
the staff proposal is to rezone 7,000 or so lots to R2.5. Eli is saying that in addition to that, for the ones that don't get rezoned, allow them to be developed under R5 standards, but to split the ownership, which I think supports the point you're trying to make that these are
What creates a
affordable entry
smaller
points.
FAR.
Right.
Right. You'd be allowed to split them, but the overall massing would have to comport to the R5 zone
So you'd have a 1,200 square foot house.
on each side.
Do we have any data that says how big is the average?
1250, maybe a little bit bigger. I don't know, something like that.
We've got a lot of these houses being built, and we heard testimony from the leading for-profit builder doing this. I don't recall what they said is their average size, but I'm pretty sure it's bigger than 1,200 feet. So we are curtailing to some extent the marketplace for affordable first-time home ownership, even with your proposal, Eli.
I think you're right. With my proposal, it would diminish how large the structure could be on these lots versus what's happening under today's rules. That's correct. Which
I like your
basically am saying
original
I'm okay with that.
proposal, Eli. I think it's we're over-regulating now, where we're saying, okay, well, it'll be half, but then the other half will have some special regulations, and then if you look at column B and you combine it with column D, I think we're already overburdening many of the small builders who are going to try to wade through all the nuance of these regulations. And while, Eli, I applaud you for being probably more astute than most of these smaller developers in town in figuring this out, I think it's too much of a burden. I'm disappointed you didn't stick with your original proposal. Let's continue to allow these historic R25s to be a source of affordable housing and not overregulate it, not overcomplicate it. Let's just continue with what the marketplace has already accepted and is aware of. And I would hope we'd go for your original proposal.
A clarifying question for staff, and then Teresa's been waiting patiently, and I want to make sure we get to her. So we have a set of rules that are in place today, pre-RIP. Does the staff proposal reduce any of those options that are available today pre-RIP?
Yes, it liberalizes it for the properties that are zoned R2.5.
Right.
And it restricts it for the few vacant lots that are zoned R5. There are not very many vacant ones.
So it only affects the vacant ones. It doesn't affect the developed ones.
Correct.
Okay. So, Jeff, I'm not sure how much we're taking away, but let's go to Teresa.
Can you clarify that? What?
The policy today is not that if a lot is 25 by 100 in R5 zone, it can be built on. The policy is that the lot has to be big enough, and the decision of big enough was 3,000 square feet, 36 feet wide. Then there's an exception that if the lot is smaller than those dimensions, if it's not big enough and it's vacant, and we wrote in vacant for 5 years, then it can be developed. This is
Let
an
Jeff think about
R5
that
zone.
while Teresa makes her point.
Yeah.
I was just referencing the comments, and I was looking at both Michelle and Kat had mentioned the city council decision on not rezoning between R2.5 or R5s into R2.5. And did we cover that already? And I just need to go back and watch some video. No, okay. Do you have some comments on that? Is that accurate statement? Let's start with that.
Yes, it's an accurate statement. When we took the concept plan to City Council in December of last year, is that last year? 16, December of 16, sorry. It was a different council, and that council heard testimony on the concept report and had the similar conversation, and they voted to not rezone any of the properties to R2.5, and they gave us that direction. Some of the conversation was that we're not looking close enough. It's hard to do this on the citywide scale, which goes back to what Joe was saying about, maybe an area plan is a better opportunity, and we can engage more robustly with community members. So that was, I think, what persuaded some of the council members to vote against it.
Okay, so we got direction not to do it, but now we're going to go back and say, well, we think you should do it anyway? Is that?
We got new direction.
Okay.
From different council members and a different mayor.
Okay.
To
Bring back
pursue
some
it
options.
in a way so that they could have the conversation again. And so that's what we asked you all to do, was to look for more options as we got deeper into actually writing the code and what we're doing. Were there any options that made any sense? And so they asked us to bring that back.
Okay, so we are looking at options that are theoretically different than do them all, which was the first one.
The first one, what do you mean?
I mean, the option that was rejected was do them all. Not through this process. So,
Remember what we took to
theoretically,
City Council, you mean?
right? So theoretically, we're looking for something less than do them all.
I think the fact that we didn't have hearings at the Planning Commission last time made that council more uncomfortable without hearing the expertise of the commission. So, like Susan said, I think taking it back through the proper process and channels was what they were looking for.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to highlight one item in the staff response in the table, which is, as an alternative, PSC could consider changing the comp plan designation, but not actually rezone. Sandra, do you want to give us the pro cons on that, just to leaven the discussion here?
I think what Commissioner Spivak is proposing is kind of two versions of the R5 zone, the big version of R5, and then, the regular version of R5, and then the bigger version of R5. Right?
Yeah, split ownership version of R5.
Well, it seems like it's an extra tool.
In the R5 zone, thinking of R5 is more of a massing constraint. how big can you do it? It's saying that in these historic areas, you have one more stick in your pocket of things you can do with it, which is you can put a property line in there.
Right. Or
Keep the old
conversely,
property line
you
in there.
could rezone them to R2.5 and say, but your development standards are like R5 if you're confirming a lot line. So you could do it.
You could. That'd be a lot more complicated. I think it's a lot easier to say you're R5, but your lot standard goes to R2.5, which is exactly the way corner
So it's
duplexes
two
are handled right
versions
now.
of R5. So that gets me back to your consideration of the comp plan designation, because the way zoning works right now, and it has worked, and I think we're veering off of that, is that we want to know the use first. That's why R is first versus CM, et cetera. We want to know what density, so the 2.5 equates to how many units per, how many lot size. And then we want to know lot size, and then we get to development standards. With this proposal, we're kind of pushing and bringing the development standards as more
Moving to form-based rather than unit-based.
exactly right, more prominent, I guess is what I was going to say. Changing the comp plan designation gives the indication that that's the long-term goal for this area, is to upzone the area to more units, and then they would go through a quasi-judicial rezone, and the approval criteria there would be that there's adequate public services that can be provided. That would be really valuable for West Portland Park. If you look at that little pocket in West Portland Park, which has no streets, and if they do have a street, it's dirt roads. So that gives BDS an opportunity and the public an opportunity to participate in a process that's just about a specific lot.
Sure.
I mean, I guess I'm not too supportive of this approach because I don't really want to increase the massing allowed of these random spots. I would, with that mention you made, be okay with further amending what I was proposing to say in the A overlay area. You know, because if there's an area where there's no streets, you know, we've already talked about that as an area that would be. So I'm not sure if that ever happens with these narrow lots, but.
It would in West Portland Park, and that's their main deficiency, is of streets there.
Would that area be in or out of the A overlay as we discussed it with straw voting?
I believe it's in. Much of it is in.
About half of it's in.
With
half
the
of
new
it's
configuration of the
Okay, I just remember because in the A overlay, the idea is that you're in the A overlay, but if your particular location doesn't have a street, then you don't get to use the provisions of it.
Right.
So I guess that could still apply in this scenario too. If you don't have the street, you can't just
confirm the lot.
Confirm the lot.
Okay, because you're
I'd
not
be okay
taking
with that.
advantage of the A overlay either. You're not doing the duplex either.
Right. Yeah, I'm
Right.
totally good with that. I'm just
Okay.
saying that if you can do a duplex by right in the R5 zone,
Mhm.
mid block, then let someone use the tool of putting a line in there. That's all I'm trying to get to.
Okay, I'm conscious of the time budget for this item. Are we ready to take some straw votes, or people have more they want to say? All right, then get your green cards out.
Yeah, but there's a fourth option now, right? So there's these three options of some, fewer. Number 3 is all. I would say number 4, if I can say this correctly, Eli, would be to rezone all the purple to R2.5, rezone the, no, it's not rezone, allow lot confirmations on the other properties that have historically narrow lots with the unimproved street exception that we wrote into the A overlay.
Well said. All right, so we will go through those in order. So all those who support the staff proposal to rezone about 7,000 lots near centers and corridors from R5 to R2.5.
Could we clarify? Yeah,
There will
is
be-
this,
You get to vote once.
Okay.
And what will, okay. So-
that's the case, then I want to include the staff proposal in mine because I support that as well.
all right, so
Can I ask a clarifying question? On the staff proposal, where you say 2 to 3 blocks, typically we have a numerical distance,
Mhm.
250 feet, 500 feet. How are we measuring in this case?
We did it pretty much street by street basis, and we didn't want to use a numerical number because we didn't want to create split zone lots and do like 500 feet, and we're not allowing the first 20 feet of some lot to be rezoned.
Part of the feedback we got the first time through with this was that we didn't take a close enough look at the specific places where this would be would apply, the blocks that would be affected. So we did a version of that to come up with this proposal where we looked at the blocks and sort of chose the center line of streets
throughout
typically.
the zoning code, when we want to create some use tied to a center or a corridor, we're numeric. We're a quarter of a mile, we're walking distance, we're 500 feet, And so now we're introducing this whole new, well, we made our judgment, and I guess it's probably too late to suggest this, but I think a numeric standard, so it's clear and objective, and so somebody who looks at the map and goes, gee, they missed my lot. I'm not purple. I should be because of this or that reason, or I'm really only at 1.5 blocks. I'm wondering why in this case we're
standard,
not
some things we
doing
do with maps. This one we did as a map, right?
We were asked to take a close place-based look at these places, so that's how we used the center lines of streets.
Did we ask
approximated
did
this.
we ask that? Was that a commission request or?
No, that's how we developed the proposal. That's based on what we heard.
All right, so I think there are two ways we can do the vote. Let me check your preference. So one way is you can get to vote for one item, and then we'll throw away the least popular and do the same thing again so that we can kind of do a rank preference kind of voting. Or you can vote for multiple items, and the one that gets the most votes is going to win the beauty contest. Do you guys have a preference on how we do that?
I guess my preference, as I think about this, would be to do vote only for one, and then with mine, I want to include with it the staff proposal number 1. So mine is basically rezone exactly as one described and fit the other ones. So just make that mine.
Okay. All right. So let's try this again.
Okay. But it's really essentially different than staff's proposal. Staff rezones and does not allow land division, so it's a whole different proposal. It's just one.
Okay. So those who support the staff proposal to rezone approximately 7,000 lots from R5 to R2.5 near centers and corridors. Green cards, please. I have 1. Okay. Second option is to limit that to only those lots actually on corridors. Cards. I have 1. Okay. So 3 is Eli's original proposal, which would rezone all the lots that meet this criteria to R2.5, something like 14,000 lots. All those in support of that. 1. Okay. So option 4 would be the staff proposal for the 7,000 lots that staff has identified, plus on the remaining lots, they would remain R5, but would have the option to confirm the lot lines to create separate ownership. Did I say that right? Okay. The exception for where there are undeveloped streets, right? Did I say that right? Okay. All those who support number 4. Okay, so I think we have a clear winner. All right, shall we go on to issue 9.2?
Yes, please. Thank you. So issue 9.2 is still about historically narrow lots, and I guess we have. Yeah. So basically, development on the remaining historically narrow lots, we had proposed not to rezone them to R2.5, and that wouldn't allow them to develop. There's an amendment on the table to continue allowing those corner lots to do a property line adjustment that swivels the existing narrow property line like that. Staff talked about this response, and we are fine with the amendment because it's taken advantage of an attached housing corner lot provision that's allowed everywhere, even if you're not in the A overlay.
Okay, any discussion on that? All those who support that? Okay. Easy one. 9.3.
All of them, yeah.
No, 10.3.
9 point.
Okay.
Do we not have 9.3? No.
Not my sheet.
No, we don't have a 9.3. Why? I just want to make sure that we're not. No, there isn't. I was like,
Move
are
on
we
to a
really
new
done
topic.
with one?
New topic.
Okay. So, proposal number 10. So, this is about all narrow lots, not just the ones in our 2.5 zone. I just want to clarify that because in the R5, R7, R10, when people do land divisions, they can do narrower lots. We don't have any amendments for this issue, so all I put in the PowerPoint was what we were proposing, which is when lots are narrower than 32 feet wide, they need to be attached. That the height is limited for detached houses to 1.5 times the width if the lot is narrower than 32 feet wide. And the parking issue of the parking is prohibited between the building and the street. And this slide shows where parking would be allowed, not where it's prohibited, but those are the areas where it would be allowed. And we didn't have any amendments for this, so I'm going to move on if that's what we want to do, Commissioner Smith.
Anyone who wants to propose an amendment, or shall we?
I won't make it. I'll mention that during the RIPSAC process, this is one of the only things where people all liked, I think.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Should we confirm that these were narrow lots in R5?
Do you want to ask? Yeah, please ask.
Just wanting to confirm that with the decision about the historically narrow lots in R5 being able to be confirmed, these provisions would apply to those development on those lots. Okay.
That makes sense to everybody? Not seeing any objections?
So the only difference would pretty much be FAR height setback. Did we change the front setback? No, we're at 10 feet for the front setback. This is why we need to come back on September 11th with where we landed on everything. Okay. Proposal 11. So we're back to our 2.5 zones. There are many lots that are already zoned R2.5, and then obviously the proposal has more lots that will be zoned R2.5. So we took a look at what the proposals were. One of the proposals that staff had for 11.1 is to require that at least 2 dwelling units be built if the lot in R2.5 is double sized. So if you have 5,000 square feet or more, someone has to develop at least 2 units on that lot. It can be a house and an ADU. That was our original proposal. There's an amendment from Commissioner Spivak to require the same thing for lots in the R5 and R7 zones.
Okay.
When they're double sized, at least double sized.
So the logic here is that if your lot is sized, so it's like 2 times the size of a normal lot, you actually have to get 2 houses on it, and not just have that for the R2.5 situation, but the larger lot situation too.
Comments?
Just to be clear, so if it's a R5, you have to be 10,000 square feet for this to take effect. So you could build a single house on a 9,900 square foot lot, but you hit 10,000, you got to divide it.
No, you don't have to divide it.
What?
Build 2 structures.
You wouldn't have to divide it, right? You could build a house and an ADU to meet it.
Okay.
Or you can divide it, and then they wouldn't trigger this requirement.
And can I just clarify that it's not a requirement that it's a detached ADU? It's just as a house and an ADU.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll just point out that Morgan, as I understand it, did consider this for those zones, but it wasn't necessary because people aren't really building in R5 and R7 on oversized lots at this point.
Okay. All those in favor of Eli's amendment? That carries. 11.2.
So 1.2 is about the lot width itself. Our proposal was to reduce the minimum lot width from the existing 36 feet wide to 25 feet wide On the perimeter lots, when you do a bunch of attached houses, if you can imagine, the perimeter ones being 25 feet wide so that they can have a 5-foot setback, and then the interior lots be 20 feet wide. I have a picture. I'll show you that. That's better. So our proposal was to go from, instead of 36 to 25 and 20. Granted, a lot of people go down to these numbers, but they need to meet other discretionary standards during the land division process. And BDS can talk to you more about that, about what value that provides, if you need to hear about that. The amendment is to reduce the minimum lot widths from the 36 feet to 21 feet and 16 feet on the interior. So 21 on the perimeter. I took liberties on the amendment. Or 23 feet on the perimeter and 18 feet in the interior.
So this would simply eliminate the discretionary review.
Ours did also. I'm sorry, there's still a discretionary review. It still goes through a land division, but there aren't additional approval criteria. It eliminates those additional approval criteria.
Okay, so let's have a brief discussion of what those approval criteria are. If somebody from BDS wants to join us.
Sean, can you enlighten? Thank you very much. So Sean Williams will join us from BDS, as I am rusty on those.
We're wanting to understand what some of the approval criteria are.
For when you are doing lots that are less than 36 feet wide in R5 or less than 42 in R7.
So one of the things we would look at would be meeting the purpose statement for lot dimensions. So as a part of that, we do have to look at compatibility with the neighborhood, which can be troublesome sometimes. So if there's not a lot of narrow lots in the area, then it might be hard to demonstrate that on balance you're compatible with that area. I'd say that's probably the main distinction. Otherwise, we're just looking at as well what types of structures you could have on the width of the lots, where your parking has to be, certain landscaping requirements as well.
Okay, and I see the staff comment that staff could support 21 feet, but not 18 on the perimeter. What's the 3 feet about?
Is that what we said? No, we would support both. I mean, if we support 16, we would support 18.
Okay, discussion?
That's just sloppy.
So my pitch for this is that, having lived in row house cities before, they're regularly 16 feet, sometimes narrower, and I didn't see a reason. I know Portland has 25 foot wide is pretty tight for a detached structure to fit in there, but once you do attaching homes, 25 feet is pretty wide for attached homes. And in practical perspective, just allowing attached homes that are narrower, 18, 20, 16 feet wide, it worked. It's a good form. So I wanted to make the option open to it.
Okay. Other discussion? If not, everyone who supports Eli's amendment? Passes?
And just for clarity, are we saying 16?
16 and 18, yes.
No, it has to be 16 or 18.
Oh, I see.
16
so
for the
18 is not
interior lot.
perimeter, So 16. Yeah, I think we just voted. Just to confirm, everybody who's good with 16?
16 on the interior lots, 21 on the perimeter lots to allow for the 5-foot setback.
Is that what you're proposing, Eli? Okay. So let's raise those cards one more time. All right. Thank you. There were no comments on 11.3. Shall we move past that?
I have a slide. Basically, this would allow, so just to get you, because you need to understand this for the next slide, for the next proposal, which is that when you have a previously platted lot line, we're going to allow for the property line adjustment, or our proposal is to allow for property line adjustment to create a small flag lot in the back. The idea here is that there has to be an existing lot up front, so we're doing the house retention that we've been talking about, that we're trying to accomplish, and that basically an ADU-like structure in the backyard can be on its own lot. So that's what the 11.3 is about. We added some limitations on the house on the small flag lot in the back. The small flag lot's less than 3,000 square feet. the whole size of the flag lot, including the pole. One of the limitations is 1,000 square foot of floor area. It has maximum of 20-foot high tall building, which equates with what our size buildings are for the detached ADUs, and there's some exterior design elements for that. The amendment that's on the table from Commissioner Spivak is to remove the height limits on small flag lots where the base density allows 2 units.
Eli, you want to make your pitch?
Sure. So I love the intent of what I might call mini flags, where you can preserve the existing house and put a flag lot so you can have another house behind it. In this situation, I'm glad the slide's up. This is an R2.5 zone. This is a 5,000 square foot lot. So this lot is entitled to have 2 homes on it or more with the FAR availability of 2.5 zone, which is pretty high. So you can build a lot on this lot. So I love the idea of allowing the mini flag, but I'm not sure why we'd want to limit the size of the house in the back. Because if a developer is looking at a lot like this, they got 2 choices. One choice is to use this provision and build a house on the back of the lot to try and get more value out of the lot. The other option is to demo the house and build 2 pretty big homes, maybe each with their own ADUs on the same lot, and just put the property line in there, which they can do by right because it's R2.5 zone, and the houses are side by side, and you've lost the existing house. So my concern is that if you put a limit on how big the house and constrain what you can build in the backyard, then you're pushing the developer towards just scraping the house and starting from scratch. It's better off, I think, to give the developer a real carrot to keep the existing house by letting them use their full entitlement for the house in the backyard. So I get the trade-off here. You're getting a bigger massing in the backyard, but I think it's the only way to make this a meaningful carrot for someone to keep the house in the front. Otherwise, they'll just scrape it. That's my reason why I wanted to. And I think that if we had this exact same discussion, but the top of the slide said R5 zone, then I would say absolutely can limit the size of the house in the back. But we're talking 2.5 zone, which allows bigger structures.
If it were R5 though, and they could do a duplex, that's much bigger than the existing house, they would probably do that too. Duplex with a detached ADU or a 4-plex.
They might, but they couldn't split the lot. And that's what you're trying to provide for here, is the ability to split the lot. R5 zone, you can't split this lot. R2.5, you can split it anyway, whether this passes or not. So I'm just saying if you can split the lot, let's let someone split it in a creative way and still build their housing on it.
But this proposal is only to do a property line adjustment, not to, well, it's R2.5.
Oh, is that right? No, I think it's R2.5. This is not just bending an existing line. This is dropping a new line in. Am I getting that right? I think this is a partition.
Sure. Let me just double.
Okay.
It's in the property line adjustment chapter. So could you do this today, Sean, through a land division?
Through a land division, you could do that. I think
Today,
this
that's
proposal
what I
was
want-
to allow property line adjustments.
Right, because the land division can already do this.
Yes.
Okay.
And the house in the rear does not have this size limitation.
There
It
would be
has-
no size limitations.
There's all those other limitations. They have to landscape the perimeter, correct? So
Mhm.
the width of the pole is 12 feet. The perimeter landscaping.
Correct.
And then they're exempt from designs based on design standards.
Yeah.
And they can build up to the maximum height,
Mhm.
which in R2.5 is 35 feet.
So I guess I love the idea of this flag lot provision as a
Mhm.
PLA. I just don't know why you would decrease its utility by reining in the size of the house in the back to be a lot lower than what the base zone R2.5 would allow. That makes sense?
Because we started from the notion of how can we preserve a house?
Mhm.
I mean, what can you do on if the house is already straddling that lot line? Which in all of those areas, there are houses over every single lot line.
Right.
So it has to do with the demolition.
Well, we know what you can
of
do on a
those
house
houses.
on a lot line, and what you can do is you can scrape it off and build 2 big new homes there.
Right.
So the
this
idea
was
is to come up with something that's
provide-
competitive against that option.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think that this is less competitive because you're saying the thing you can build in the backyard is really small. It'd be more competitive against a scraping option if you just allowed the house in the back to be whatever someone wants to build, subject to the FAR limits and all that stuff.
Discussion? Well, I'll just say that growing up, my grandmother's house was the rear house in a flag lot. Worked just fine as far as I can tell. All those in support of Eli's amendment? 1, 2, 3, 4. The folks who have their cards down want to comment?
I'm just sort of concerned about privacy in the backyard. So,
For me, it seems like there are options to split the lot and make 2 houses, and having the flag lot part where it's coming through and dedicating land in order to do that. It just seems that it would be better to have a house that wasn't gigantic so that you wouldn't take up all of the available space with house and pavement to get back there.
Yeah, I would just say it just kind of goes to the issue of landscaping compatibility with the neighborhood. And I mean, I know we're just throwing a lot at the neighborhood and, but throw them a bone here. Just kind of get a little house.
Okay, so 4 votes is not a majority, so I'd say the amendment fails.
Right.
All right, let's move on to...
You'll be happy on number 11. I'm withdrawing that one.
Okay, both parts. All right.
Chair, just to clarify, 4 votes is a majority of the voting commissioners here today. I don't know what our rules are about that and these informal votes, but...
You are correct. I forgot that Andre is not voting,
Right,
so say
okay.
it passes.
So because it passes, I have a clarification question. Now that the skinny lots, with your other vote, of the non-purple lots that are going to remain R5, but the lot line can be confirmed under it, does this provision apply to those lots also?
I think it would not because they're R5, not R2.5. I think this is just for R2.5 zone.
Well, we wrote R2.5
Five.
because we weren't proposing what you proposed to do, to confirm the lot line for any R5 lots. So that's why it's under the R2.5 heading. But now that we're confirming lot lines for R5 zoning at this density,
Okay, I guess I would the logic for me of it would be that this provision would be only allowed in the areas that we actually rezoned to R2.5. It would not be allowed in the other situations, because in the R5 situation, if you have a house, the detached structure in the backyard is already capped at ADU size. Right? You don't have the choice of doing this. Like the only reason to have a cap on how big the structure in the backyard can be is if it's not elsewhere in the code. In the R5 lot, the little structure in the backyard is already capped with these standards.
Okay, so let me sort it out procedurally. Your amendment was specific to R2.5, right?
Yes.
Is there anyone who wants
If
to
I'm
make
missing something in here, you can go
anyone who
further.
wants to make a comparable amendment for R5?
So the size limits would still apply to a flag lot less than 3,000 square feet in R5.
I guess I'm going back to this one. Do we want to even allow this configuration for those lots that are zoned R5,
Oh, the
but are allowed
configuration.
to confirm this lot line now,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
but they're not confirming it to scrape and build attached houses? They're confirming it to move the property line.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I like that idea of. I'm sorry, this is awfully wonky, but
I
I mean,
know.
if basically, Sandra, what you're getting to is if you have an area that's historically been zoned, that has a house on it with a detached accessory dwelling unit, which is already capped at size because you can only build detached accessory structures so large, and you have a historic property line. Can you bend that line as a flag to sell them separately?
Or can you scrape and bend the line and build 2 big houses?
Well, we already know you can't in that situation, you can't scrape and build a line.
Oh, right, because you have to maintain the existing house.
Right.
Right, or maybe you don't have a detached accessory structure in the back. Maybe you're just building a new house.
Right. Well, in that
R5
case,
provisions.
on the R5 provision, you wouldn't have to have this. You could use the 11.3 language to allow the property line to bend, but you wouldn't need the additional rules on how big the structure could be because that's already baked into the
Base
R5
it would be
base zone.
0.5 FAR on the rear lot.
Right.
Right.
So the answer is, I mean, this is pretty wonky.
So
I mean,
this
the answer is I'd be fine with that because you're basically allowing.
Right.
It's just another way of splitting a lot, but you're not giving a person the chance to build anything big in a backyard that you couldn't otherwise do in that zone.
Right. So this is what happens when we take one zone, R5. Well, actually, we have experience with that with RH that we're fixing in the multi-dwelling zones, right? RH has two versions, the 2.1, 2-to-1 and 4-to-1 RH, and now we're splitting them to MD 3 and 4 or whatever. We're doing the same for R5 here. We're taking R5 and saying R5 means this, except if you have existing lot lines, it means this different thing. So now all of these provisions we have to think through and see if we want.
Well, I don't need to add that complexity. I thought you were offering a low-hanging fruit.
No,
option.
we've already added that complexity with our previous vote. And so when we go through these, we have to think through which of these provisions apply. Just like Shannon asked, the R of these other ones, the R5 zoned lots. Oh my gosh, do these apply to those R5 lots? It's the same question I'm asking here. Just because. So I think I understand what we're saying.
I stopped tracking that. I'm sorry.
I think what we're saying is that we want to allow for small flag lots in R5.
Historically narrow lots.
I thought it was just R2.5 that this. Am I missing this? I thought this whole flag lot discussion was just R2.5 zone.
It was because we weren't proposing to confirm R5 lots. If you were going to confirm a lot line, it would be rezoned to R2.5. So there was no need to talk about the other zones.
Gotcha.
So I believe, and I'm not really sure what the implications of this are, but under what we approved earlier, you could confirm that lot line, and you are limited, though, to what you can build between the front structure and the back structure to what's allowed under R5. And so this variation would allow you to confirm and move that lot line, but you'd still, for both of those parcels somehow, be limited to what you could build under R5. I'm not sure how that works
So 0.5
exactly,
FAR in the front, well, the house is already there, so we wouldn't be calculating that.
Yeah,
We haven't worked out those nuances, but 0.5 in the rear.
Kat, you had a thought?
Well, perhaps just where my head was at is considering that our 2.5 is a zone that, like you said, allows for larger lots. It's looking at areas where we're allowing for more units and kind of size in comparison to lot size of home in comparison to lot size. So it perhaps feels a little bit more dense is kind of where my head's at, that I could get my head wrapped around this. And I think, again, going back to just kind of, okay, R5 is a little bit different thing. And the concern about a lot of structures set up like this would just be a large home in the backyard. It's the effect on the neighbors versus if you're splitting the lot down the center, it still leaves backyards as kind of feeling a little more open space. So I guess, again, where I'm going with it is I kind of got my head wrapped around, these are more, these are neighborhoods that are set up for our 2.5, thought about as that way, thought about as having more density within a little less open space, and I'm okay with that. I'm not sure I'm personally ready to take it to R5.
Okay. Can I suggest that staff bring this back to their next work session as part of the reconciliation of all these various issues, and if there are options for us to look at that time, that'd be great. All right.
Can I, as part of bringing it back, will we have some code language? 'Cause I'm a little confused going back to the Eli compromise on the R25s where we're going to verify, we're going to do lot confirmations, certain circumstances. I'd really like to see the code language and see if I can then begin to understand it, because I'm lost on the nuance and subtlety of what we did on.
Yeah. So why don't we, I have a slide that describes our next steps, and we can talk about our next steps when we're done through our issues. Okay. So we have other issues that don't fall within our clean 3 buckets, and hopefully you've taken a look at that. We're on page 6 of the worksheet, and starting with the first one, issue number 1 is about the tree code, and there's an amendment from Commissioner Hauk. There's no proposal from staff on this, amendment from Commissioner Hauk to remove the tree code exemption on sites less than 5,000 square feet in area and require all sites that are 2,500 square feet and larger to comply with the tree preservation standards.
Okay, discussion? Andre? Oh, Susan. Sorry. Let me see hands, just I get them all. I have Andre and Teresa and Kat and Jeff, so we'll go in that order.
Oh, okay. I'm supportive of this. We have thrown out, I mean, we've confused what 5,000 square feet in the residential. The tree code exempted the 5,000 because of, if you look at the criteria, we thought it was a residential single-family home type of area, if we go back to the tree code. And now we've said it's about massing. Mm-hmm. And when you talk massing, it's about what you do on that lot now and how the sustainability and our climate action plan relies on the residential areas for a good component of our air quality and through the trees. And we are, in my view, and I think Mike's here too, I haven't talked to him personally, potentially imposing rules that may, at the end of the day, if you look at the fourplex and the amount of square footage that was left in the drawings, whether or not someone would plant a tree in that small space becomes questionable in my mind. And so if you're talking about a single family dwelling area, I'm all in favor. If you're talking about massing of units now in 5,000 square feet, which we are now, not single family dwelling areas, that's a different story about what land's left for trees. And I don't know what the implications are, even if we will get implications about the likelihood of development on the remaining land left from the massing that we have when you go to maximum capacity potential on the lots. But we have to do something, I think, and whether or not this is the right one and this is the reach today, I think we got to do something here.
Okay, Teresa?
I'll basically just echo what he said, especially with the last thing we just did with flag lot and whatever size giant house we can fit back there. We've changed the R2.5, and I think we need to leave a little bit of room for some green space. That's what makes our city as beautiful and livable as it is.
Can I just remind everyone that there are maximum building coverages and there are required setbacks. So these are just the tree preservation and planting standards.
So don't disagree with what either of you said. I'm struggling with, I don't know enough about this code. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I don't understand, I'd have to have it pulled up in front of me and how to apply it. So I guess what I'm getting at is, in my personal opinion, there's not enough information here to be able to vote on it. So whether that means I would ask you to come back with more information, or whether it's I absolutely agree it needs to be looked at and it needs to be a separate project and it's something we include in a letter to say, let's spend some time really understanding how the tree code kind of comes together with everything that we've talked about doing.
Jeff?
I agree with Kat, and I also agree with staff. As your representative on DRAC, I can tell you that builders complain incessantly about the tree code requirements. They're inconsistent, they're expensive, and there's always discussion about the need for an overhaul of Title 11. And I think to interject into RIP at this late stage, a Title 11 change without, as Kat said, knowing the context, knowing the implications, letting constituencies that have a big concern about what's in Title 11, I just think it's too much at this point. And as Sandra pointed out, we already have setback and lot coverage that addresses a lot of Mike's concerns, I think, without going this final step of making what I can't tell if it's a major or not, but it appears like it could be a major change to Title 11 when we simply haven't been dealing with Title 11. So I concur with staff and Kat. Wrong time, wrong place for this discussion.
Sandra, refresh my memory. Did we have testimony from Audubon and potentially others on this topic in RIP?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the Audubon and a couple of other groups potentially. I'd have to go look back in more detail, but they did include this in their letter.
Thank you, Lev. Eli?
I think that it's, I also, even as someone who's followed the tree code, Title 11, and had my challenges doing that, I will note that it has come up in testimony. City Council, when they gave direction of the concept draft, said, well, what's in there to help preserve trees? And staff, despite some good efforts to try and do some things to encourage tree preservation, wasn't able to bake that into the proposed draft. So I think this is in some ways an attempt to support tree canopy preservation measures as part of the residential infill project that we got BPS got direction from City Council to try and do. So I'm kind of in the torn situation of I want to do something to help support existing tree canopy. My inclination is probably to support this, but I don't know enough information about like what are the implications of bringing this down to this smaller scale site. But it's also a large percentage of the city, and it's 45% of the city. So there's a good argument, I think, for doing something to help preserve tree canopy in these residential areas. So one idea would be to put in a letter. Another idea would be to punt this to next meeting when Mike can be here, and toss it in with cottage clusters, or straw vote now. But that's my thinking.
Sandra, would staff be able to provide some assessment of impact by our next work session?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, then let's push that.
And we can bring some examples of what, right? Yeah, we could do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so no vote on issue number 1, tree code, and we'll be back at the next work session with that. The second issue was where to draw the line between single dwelling and multi-dwelling zoning, and Commissioner Bortolaso had the idea to shift the R2.5 into multi-dwelling zoning, Better Housing by Design project.
Discussion? All right, anyone who thinks we should do this, please raise your green card. I see none.
I propose we put this in a letter to council to consider it as a separate from actually, I don't know if we even have the power to shift this to another zoning project, but we could suggest that the city consider either with Better Housing by Design or some future project to.
By the time council acts on our recommendation here, Better Housing by Design will already be packaged up and sent to council, right? So it's, if we don't combine the projects, it's going to be too late for council to do it, I believe.
I think what we were thinking is that we wanted to get through all our issues and do all our straw votes on residential infill. And while we go away and work, Bill and his team can be here for Better Housing by Design. And there's definitely some alignment there of what's the issue between R 2.5 and the RM1 and RM2, and do they need to be separate or not? What I take this to mean is also that in the single dwelling zone, you can have a really large lot and build one house. Partially because you're not precluding the ability to develop in the future. In the multi-dwelling zones, there's always the minimum density. So that's one of the big differences between the two. We would calculate the minimum density, and Bill's going further in his project with that. We felt it was definitely too big a decision to make today.
Okay, any further discussion, Kat?
Well, I guess I'll just quickly add kind of same thing. Without fully understanding that part of Better Housing by Design's code, I feel ill-equipped to be able to make a comment on this amendment at this point in time, and therefore wouldn't be able to vote for it. Doesn't, I guess, mean, looking at larger timing, and perhaps you can refresh our memory, is this something that is, as we go through Better Housing by Design, we would have the chance to come back and revisit or not?
Yes, that's the idea, that you would have time to come back and revisit this.
Okay.
All right. Great, thank you.
Okay, so number 3, allowing lots to be split for duplexes and triplexes.
Is this the one you were withdrawing, Eli?
I want to withdraw this one, but I want to suggest a note in a letter instead. So I'll just take 2 minutes to describe the context here. I think what under current rules, where it takes like a year to do a partition process, you're finding developers doing lots of increasing numbers of 2 to 4 unit condos around town, which is a poor long-term practice because that means the group of people have to end up maintaining the association forever. And it's really just a way of sidestepping a partition process that takes too long. And I think that and in terms of providing flexibility for future use, I think staff sort of brought up maybe condos are easy to unravel than multiple lots. I don't think that's quite true. I think actually unraveling a condo can be harder because in order to unravel something, once you own all the pieces of it, you can unravel it in a snap either way, whether it's a condo or multiple lots. But the problem is getting to owning all the pieces of it. And condos have rules about owner occupancy. You have to have mostly owner occupied. So I think it's actually pretty hard to unravel. If you want to think to the long term of the future, maybe the site will eventually be a larger, higher density development. It's probably easier to assemble detached lots than condos. That said, this is a bigger project than RIP. I've been convinced of that. And I think that although I love the elegance of being able to divide lots without changing the form, I think it's too much. So I guess what I'm suggesting is that we drop this amendment idea, but include a recommendation that council look at Portland's partition process and try and figure out a way that it could be expedited or simplified. And so that instead of it taking a year, it might take more what some other jurisdictions take, which maybe, Jeff, you've been around them more. I've heard it's 3-4 months. Sometimes people exaggerate that, but my sense is that it takes a long time in Portland, and that's steering people into this really weird way of doing lots of little condos where all they're owning in common is a fence. And so that's my recommendation is to drop the amendment, but have language suggesting a new process. Thanks.
Jeff?
I'm sorry to see you giving up the fight, Eli, because I've heard this complaint over and over and over again. And I think it in some ways it goes to the heart of what we're trying to do with RIP. We want to see more duplexes, triplexes. And one of the major impediments to a developer looking at an opportunity or looking at a lot and saying, do I build a single family house, or gee, now I can do a duplex or triplex, is this very issue. I mean, everybody hates these small condos. They don't sell as well. They're a problem on so many levels where you have small condo associations owning 2 or 3 units, where what the market wants, what the builders want is they could deliver, I think, more of these duplexes and triplexes if we allowed side by side a townhouse and made it easier and just allowed a simple process that said, this lot allows 3 units. I want to build 3 townhomes, and the most efficient, cost-effective way to do that is fee simple. So I can sell each of these townhomes separately. It's what the market wants. It's so much easier than creating a condominium that takes legal fees, that takes a ton more paperwork. It's an awkward ownership for the buyers. Many people are understandably reluctant to buy into it. It's the exact same product. You could look at, let's say, 3 townhomes on a 5,000 square foot lot, and you'd have no way of knowing whether it's a townhome or a condo. So we're not talking about massing. We're simply saying, if we want to enhance the opportunity for the very thing we're doing with RIP, more duplexes, more triplex, this would be an incredibly helpful tool to the builders who are trying to do this. And I haven't yet heard it's complicated, it's difficult. I still don't know why. There's not, at one point I thought there was a state law prohibition. There's no state law prohibition. So I'm not quite sure. I don't know why we can't do it, as I guess the answer, other than I understand there's a huge reluctance because it seems so radical. And I'm not persuaded by if we're saying as a policy matter with RIP, we're going to allow a triplex. I'm not sure why all the infrastructure bureaus need to weigh in and say, oh, well, if it was a single-family house, water, sewer, street frontage is okay, but now you're doing a triplex where you have this dramatic change that requires a far more intense, time-consuming infrastructure review. I think we should give up on that in order to expedite and enhance the opportunity. So I support Eli's withdrawn motion, and I still am looking for a reason why this has to be so complicated. Isn't there a group of, perhaps BDS can weigh in and bring some people who process these and say, what do we really gain? What does the city gain by forcing a builder through a year-long expensive partition process? What would we lose? What benefits to the city, what protections to the public would be lost if we simply created a right process? And I don't know if I need an answer today, but I'd sure like an email or just something that helps me understand what protections to the public will be lost if we create this expedited process. I'll get off Eli's hobby horse because I'll stay on it.
I think that this, even the proposal I put in, wouldn't solve the year-long process. If you're dropping a line in there, you still have to go through the partition process with the city. And I'll use as an example, the corner duplex provision. It's been available for over a decade, maybe 15 years in Portland. And under that provision, on a corner 50 by 100 foot lot, you can put a duplex on it. In a 5,000 square foot lot zoned R5, you can put a duplex on that lot. And you can drop a property line in there too, so it's two attached homes. Guess how often that happens? Almost never. What people are doing right now, there's half a dozen of them, but one home builder is doing half a dozen. They're doing them all as condos, where by right, they could split those lots in half. And the reason they're not, the reason they're not splitting the lot in half is because it takes so long. And maybe they're trying to beat RIP because they want to build really big ones. I'm not sure. But the obstacle for the reason builders don't do it is because of the partition process, how long it takes. And I think that unless that problem gets solved, even if this amendment I proposed were passed and we just say, okay, you can put property lines in there, I think people still wouldn't do it, unfortunately. The only people who would do it, frankly, would be maybe a couple nonprofits because their cost of money is so much lower and they already own the property. Those are the ones who actually might use this provision. But even them, even those who provide testimony, they're doing condos already just because out of frustration with the same process you identified. So I guess this is my pitch of saying that I really love this idea as a concept because you're building exactly the same structure, you're just changing the ownership, but I'm acknowledging the reality of that it's not going to get used under the current one-year partition process that it takes to do a minor separating lots in Portland. And so that's why I'm sort of saying, let's fix that one. And if we can fix that, then this might get used.
You've referenced this before, Eli, that there is a by right corner lot. You want to do a duplex. The code actually says what? That you don't have to go through a partition?
It says you can partition that corner lot, but it doesn't create an expedited process like you described. You've got to go through the whole process.
Well, so that's okay. So that's of no value. What I'm asking is, is there something that says you can create this property line, you can create fee simple in an expedited manner? And if the answer is,
I think the answer to that is other code update. I asked Eric Engstrom this question, and he said that the process to do a minor partition is fully within Title 33. So it's something that could come before the Planning Commission, but that would be outside of the residential. That would be a different project.
Let's get Andres a chance to get in here.
Sorry.
I'd like to echo that. I think that the discomfort I have with staff's response to this amendment is that it feels like condos are being used as a brake pedal in the proposal to keep RIP incremental. There's a section in here about how this would widely open the ability to create smaller fee simple lots. And I guess what I want to say is, at least from my perspective, that fee simple lots are unequivocally a positive goal. And maybe this would have been the wrong approach. Maybe opening the floodgates isn't the right way to do it. But there's been talk of what are the next steps after RIP? What does BPS work on after this proposal moves forward. There's been conversation about site-specific planning, and I guess I'd like to put out there that it would be incredibly beneficial to see more fee simple home ownership. That condos have a number of detriments to builders, to buyers, to people who are trying to get people into home ownership, and that fee simple ownership should be something the city's pursuing.
Okay, so help me wordsmith a proposal here for a straw poll. I think what I hear is we want to ask council for a legislative project to create an expedited path to fee simple ownership for multi-unit development. Does that capture it?
Yes. I think so. I mean, the specific thing is the small partition process. So maybe I'd be open to staff suggesting how this will be worded, but I think, yeah, it is to make it easier to do small partitions in support of first-time home buyer home opportunities.
Susan, you have a suggestion?
That's a question.
Sure, Jeff.
Do we need council directive to take a discrete task, maybe more complicated than I realize, to create an expedited partition process? Could we just, as a commission, make that our own directive, or do we?
Susan's got a work plan and a budget, so we have to.
Well,
No, I would recommend that you, in your letter, you lay out what you want and that you encourage council to have BPS do that, within the next year and within the next 2 years or something within the letter. And then the commissioner in charge of the Bureau will decide whether they want to do that or not.
Okay. So raise your cards if you support and ask the council for a work plan item within the next year to develop simpler paths to fee simple ownership. Appears to carry.
Can I make one comment, though?
Sure.
This all makes sense to me, but not independent of just throwing out everything we currently call residential zones and renaming everything, because I'm at the point where R5, R2.5, R2 makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I think this sort of piecemeal thing is confusing to me. It's confusing to the public. And I think it would be clear for everybody if this is a much bigger work product and it's, okay, we're blowing this up. And, if we're going to have 1,600 square foot lots, something describes that, or we have a new name for things that reflects the form objective. But
we're in the metamorphosis to a form-based code.
So I would
it's a little bit messy process.
I would push for clarity.
Right. Clarity is always a good idea. Okay. Land division.
Okay, ready to move on to land divisions. So this is the second land division issue, is how to calculate density. The amendment proposal is to calculate density before right-of-way dedication. When I was reading this, I drew two pictures in my mind. There's two types of right-of-way dedication when, let's say, the Cyan next door on 4th Avenue dedicates a portion of their right-of-way to the public right-of-way. That's one type of dedication, so it's along an existing street. And in that case, density is calculated before right-of-way dedication. There's another type of dedication when there's a lot and a private street is going to go into the lot to create a new subdivision or new land division, which I think is what you're talking about here, right?
No, I can jump in just because we're running tight. I'm withdrawing this one also. This has had to do with, I thought that in the residential zone, they did the calculation on density after the right-of-way dedication, even in the just more frontage.
Oh.
I didn't realize that was handled. So anyway, I think it's a big issue because the way it works right now, if you have a property where a street needs to be built through it, you still have a double whammy. You got to lose the density, and you got to build the street. That's huge. And that's because of that, the areas where PBOT really wants to have connectivity, they get nothing because those lots get skipped over. So there's a big issue. It's both in the single family zones and the multi-dwelling zones. Same thing comes up. So I think that it would be valuable to flag that issue for trying to figure out how to solve it. But in terms of this amendment, I want to yank that so we can move on.
Okay, thank you, Eli. Or Kat.
I would like, at some point, an explanation of, is there a reason why today it's calculated, like the example you gave in commercial zones, cyan, why that density is not given to the development?
It is.
No, it's not.
We just changed that. Council changed that in recap 8.
Okay.
2 years ago, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, after it left the commission, they changed that. The Saltzman's amendment.
Okay. So perhaps maybe as a follow-up, someone could just point me to it so I could read it and make sure I'm on the same page. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, 2 more issues. Issue number 5 is about the floodplain. We had this conversation way back when we were talking about height and scale of buildings, and Commissioner Schultz, you were bringing up some floodplain issues, and you have 2 amendments on the table. One is to measure the height from the 100-year floodplain as opposed to the lowest point, and the second is to exclude above ground basement area in floodplains. Basement above ground.
It wouldn't be a basement anymore,
really. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yes, thank you.
I could probably explain it.
Thank you.
I'm a person who has a house who's in the floodplain, and I have a basement that would be calculated more as above ground by today's calculation standards for a basement, but it's a basement. And the basement is built that way to get the main part of the house out of the floodplain. I have neighbors who don't, and I have neighbors whose main homes, get flooded every time the river rises to that point. So our house, which was an old house, was built correctly, smartly, to protect the main living portion of the structure. We do the same thing for commercial. We'll put parking lots or things below grade and let them flood and use that basement area as a way to kind of get the main built areas out of the floodplain. So I guess it's just, and what would inhibit or discourage that is the way we've put height limits on it. So again, as someone who lives in the floodplain, my house would be too tall by the standards today.
So this is all about the how to measure height. It's not about the FAR.
I was more focused on height because, again, you want to try to get unfinished, hopefully people aren't finishing it, or if they do, they realize that it could be destroyed, areas, built to be able to get the main living areas of a home up out of the floodplain. So that's the concept. And not have the height discourage building in the floodplain correctly, if you're going to build in the floodplain.
Right. And our thought a little bit was that we're in the beginnings or in the midst of the BIOP, right? And that we wanted that resolved before we change something like this.
Can someone remind me what BIOP is?
The city, the regulation of development in the floodplain for the city is going to be re-engineered based on the court's instructions reconciling the Endangered Species Acts and
That's
FEMA.
the biological opinion?
Yes, and the opinion that sort of set us down the course is the BIOP, the biological opinion that was issued by the federal agencies, and it's going through an extended process at the state level to see how far we're willing to take it and it's really much more impactful on coastal communities than it is necessarily in Portland. This applies statewide. So we know we're going to rewrite all these rules is in part what we were sort of waiting for rather than digging in and thinking through the implications now and the implications under whatever the biological opinion ultimately lands on and tells us to do.
Sorry, which I do support. I guess my concern, though, is in the meantime, and I don't know what the timing of that is. You have the potential for a bunch of homes being built not very intelligently in a floodplain, and not that this provision solves all of that, but with the height reduction, you're encouraging more finished area to be built within an area that's going to flood, and that seems unfortunate.
Yeah, and so honestly, I don't know that how much of the land we're talking about is in this situation. So if it's going to be frequently encountered or not, and don't know that it's as big a deal as the concern we're projecting on it as well. We're just leaving it unresolved, so it could be a perfectly fine thing to do as an interim step.
Can I propose that we bring this back next time too? Because I remember Morgan had looked at, where is the floodplain, what areas, what are the Title 24 regulations, and how do they mesh with the, which is the building code, and how do they mesh with these? Because the building code really has all the protections for people to build higher in the floodplain. And then we can bring something back on next time.
Right. Andre, would your comment be relevant to instructing staff?
Well, I was just trying to figure out, so would they still, if you enact this, would you still be able to do an ADU in the basement?
You can't now.
I think we have two different ideas of what basements are occurring.
Well, it may be a bad idea, but legally, could you still, could you?
Right. I think that's why we need to look at what other rules are on the books right now in Title 24 to see what it says about building living space within the floodplain area. Yeah. So I'm not sure.
Okay.
Currently, living area has to be out of the floodplain already now.
Okay, so we'll skip over number 5 and come back with that one. And we are on item number 6, which is items to include in your recommendation letter. And this is what we had before today, which was to advocate for parking permit program support, to develop curb cut fee tax proposal, to pursue a local exemption to the state building code to allow Portland to require visitability on all new single dwellings, and recommend a maximum limit on SDC waivers to 2 ADUs.
Okay, so I have a comment and a question before we get into discussing this. So on item 1, the parenthetical restrict permits for sites with off-street parking was not a recommendation of the subcommittee. We were talked out of that by PBOT, but they did want us to support the parking permit program. The question is,
I'm sorry, are you saying that we should strike the restrict permits for sites?
Yes,
with,
the parenthetical.
Okay, sorry.
Part is not
Okay.
accurate. Has the parking subcommittee report actually been presented to the PSC? Not sure if it has.
I don't think so.
Right.
Oh, did it last time?
It's been distributed, I think, Chris. I don't know
Yeah,
if we walk people through it.
Right. So I'm not sure if people are prepared to comment based on whether they've really wrapped their heads around it or not. But having said that, and the other part of the parking subcommittee report was discussion of driveway spacing, and is that slated for our next meeting? Just so I understand where that comes in.
You did not talk about that in the subcommittee?
We did, but again, other than if anybody's dug out the report and read it, the PSC has not discussed it. So,
okay,
because that is a Title 33 item. And Morgan did some very nice diagrams that we ought to give him the chance to show off.
Okay, well, we'll make sure he has the time to do that.
Okay, so with that caveat, anybody want to talk about these 4 items?
I guess I want to clarify number 4, where I like the idea of this capping the number of waivers you can get. But it seems like staff's suggesting that there might be an additional waiver opportunity if you're preserving the existing house,
Right.
which I also like. So I'm not sure how to frame this in a letter, but one might be to do both those things, to recommend a cap on, you can only get 2 ADU SDC waivers for accessory dwelling units, and to encourage council to consider using SDC waivers as a way to encourage preservation of existing homes that are internally divided. So I guess I want to toss that out as an additional language that could go into a letter on that topic.
People supportive of that?
If I'm understanding basically you can build 4 units on a property. 2 ADU, you have your primary dwelling today. You could build 2 more ADU units, then the 4th one has the other provision, affordability provision. So essentially, the 3 units, the existing and the 2, would be exempt from SDCs at this point. So there's no SDCs because the affordable one would get SDC waivers potentially. So there's no SDCs on any of the ADUs that we're proposing.
So you're suggesting you could construct a project that was SDC free if you were careful with
Most
the
of them are
rules.
going to be SDC. If you only build 3 and it's existing, you put 2 in, they're done. If you go to 4, they're done because of the affordability for the 4th one. So are we just eliminating SDCs?
There's always a primary dwelling on the site, I believe, which would always pay the SDCs. If I'm getting that.
Well, I guess sorry, I jumped in. My bad. Quick question: are we positive that the SDCs are waived on the 4th affordable unit? Clarifying. I mean, I understand why you'd assume that. I just want to make sure. Are we just assuming that?
Positive, not positive.
Well, usually
we didn't require affordability, right? We bonused it. Gave it an FAR bonus.
We give them an FAR bonus, but usually affordability, they generally ask for the SDC waivers as a way to get to the affordability. I mean, they may not grant it, but
They do that through the Housing Bureau. They say we're going to be affordable, and then they get.
They ask for that SDC waiver. That's one of the ways to reduce the cost of the.
I think it would depend on the affordability threshold. If we made our affordability threshold match theirs, then we could make it kind of automatic. But right now, the city waives SDCs based on a certain MFI for rental and a different MFI for ownership. And we would have to be synced up to that to make it really match.
Right. These are just things you wanted to include in the letter, right?
Cap?
So I guess where I would go with that, since to me that's an assumption that the Housing Bureau is going to do that, and I don't know that we know that they are or they aren't, would be that you continue to have a waiver on 1 ADU, that the second waiver comes with that affordable unit. So in a way that incentivizes getting more units built, perhaps, and kind of over the hump. I don't know if it will or it won't. And then I like Eli's provision about an SDC waiver on the existing home to help preserve homes that are then divided up.
There's no SDCs on an existing home.
Would there be SDCs on adding an ADU to an internal conversion?
Not so no. So if
No?
you have an existing home and you're adding an ADU downstairs,
There's no
you fall
SDCs.
under the SDC waiver program.
Okay, then you don't have to add that.
But if you did an internal conversion to a triplex,
So if it's a triplex, then then there is no ADU waiver.
I think the suggestion was for internal conversions that preserve the existing building that we would suggest an SDC waiver. Is that right? Right. Okay. Jeff,
can I
did
make
you have
a-
your hand up?
There already is an SDC, an SDC waiver for ADUs, and I guess
there's.
But if you're internally dividing into multiple primary units, is what I'm hearing Chris say.
But
Say you have a 3,000
ha-
square foot house, you divide it in thirds, you have 3 1,000 square foot units in there, then you'd be paying SDCs on all 3 of them because none of them would qualify as an ADU.
You
Make
pay
one-
probably for
That's
two.
under the current.
Right.
We're
Let's-
proposing to actually let you waive it because you want someone to do something like that.
Yeah. So we're talking about 2 different issues here, I think. So let's untangle them. So on ADUs, right now, we only allow 1 ADU, and you can get an SDC waiver on that if you don't do short-term rentals. The question is, if you do multiple ADUs, which we're now allowing, are they all qualified, or is there a limit? Right. And this is saying there's a limit. You only get the first 2 qualified. But then there's a separate question of internal conversions that may not be ADUs. Is do we want to suggest an SDC waiver in order, basically, preserving the existing building? Right. Slightly different public benefit there. Okay,
So the other question is, and Chris reminded me, does this come with the short-term rental provision, or is this just a, because the SDC, you only get it, my understanding, and you reminded me, Chris, is that if you commit to those
Right.
short-term rentals.
Council added that this year when they renewed the program. Yep.
So is this just the SDC in of itself, or does it have the other provision?
I think it would be the same. Right now, the city council waiver SDCs has to do with something named an accessory dwelling unit. And if you're in the program, then the short-term rental rule applies. Whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, I think that's baked into the program right now. They'll revisit it, once a year or something. But I think that it's a good assumption to think that if we're, that would be part of the deal.
So I guess my question is, do you want to include that in your letter? Because we are not making a decision or necessarily a recommend. No, I guess you are making a recommendation about that, but is that what you want to include in your letter to mimic?
Try some votes here. So
Make one comment, because I'm going to vote against including it in the letter. I think if we think through when RIP finally gets to city council, it's going to be a big, weighty, controversial zone change. And when we explain whatever we're going to explain about RIP itself, I think we begin to distract from our message if we load it up with, oh, and here's a lot of other policy concerns we want you to address. And I would encourage us to be judicious in how many sort of other policy issues we ask the city council to address. And as Eli pointed out, they're continually looking at SDC waivers for ADUs and other things. And I would suggest we might want to hold our fire and not include an ADU waiver recommendation of any kind in our letter. Wait until it's coming to city council next time, and at that point, weigh in with our policy position on what are appropriate developments for SDC waivers, whether they're ADUs or anything else.
Well, and if I could add to that, sorry to jump in, but and for us to do our job and to succeed at getting this through city council for that SDC thing, we're going to a fiscal impact statement that makes sense of it in terms of the trade-offs that the infrastructure bureaus are going to face. It's just, we would want to do that because that's what the city council is going to need to be able to make that decision. And so if that's a priority for us to do, we'd put it in and we could try to do that.
Doing a proposal here is that I think it's a good point, Jeff, and we have, though, been asked to try and provide options for retaining existing homes. So one way to couch this would be to be silent on how the existing waiver program and just say that we've done what we can with the zoning code to try and encourage preservation of existing homes, but there's something that we can't do without city council taking separate action. So we recommend the city council explore waivers for system development charges in the case of internal home conversions, because that's beyond what Title 33 can accomplish. So one way to do it is just not even talk about accessory dwelling unit.
Right.
Leave that for them to figure out on their own, but to say that the one thing we want to try and encourage people to split up homes, and it seems strange to me that you can take a house and divide it into a duplex and you pay a pretty big SEC bill when you do that. So the city council could address that.
I think there's some wisdom in what Eli's suggesting.
That's a quick question. Do we have any sense of price per square foot for the visitability on all new single dwellings?
Morgan does.
Okay.
Can I make a recommendation too?
Please.
So we're going to be throwing a lot at city council. So I think Jeff and I are in a lot of agreement here. What we're asking in the letter is a list of whether it's a half dozen or we have tree code in there and floodplain and we add 7 more things, is really a budget ask. What we're asking is pay attention to these 7 or 8 or 6 or whatever number of other things that either are part of the zoning code or aren't, but we're not going to deal with them right now because we didn't either have enough information or time or these other things. And I almost think it's better if we do that in a separate letter coinciding with the budget development so that comes out, in January. and the budgets all come in or in December. You put that in right when the bureaus are putting together their budgets, and you're able to then have an impact at that time. And by separating it from this, I think you'll get more attention to it. I'm a little worried about, I think I said this at another meeting and got grief for it, about West Hayden Island, that we are doing so much detail on an issue where it's hard for me to imagine council getting to this level of detail the way we've been for all this time. And we know how difficult it is. And this is what you're focused on. So I just, a little bit of caution about how much we put into this letter, and maybe we make it a separate at a better time.
Kat, then Andres.
I'll just make it real quick. For what it's worth, I support that. I'm seeing this letter as like 10 pages long at this point, which I think just gets lost and has less impact and waters everything down. So I think part of it is, as we go to develop the letter, perhaps we at least I would recommend start with that thought that it doesn't have to all be in one letter. Let's maybe focus on getting the RIP letter really well crafted, and then we'll have our list of things we also want to accomplish, not lose sight of all these things that we've talked about, and strategize on how best to make sure they're addressed. And maybe it makes sense to pick one or two of those to put in the letter at that point or not, and we find another opportunity.
Andres?
I like the idea. I'd like to also see a signal to it. So if we don't include it in the RIP letter, say we're going to follow up with other policies in a budget ask. And while we're doing that, I would like to add an item to this list, which would be something around anti-displacement programs or equitable programming. Most of my time in Portland has been in Northeast, in Irvington and Sabin. Now I'm in Mount Scott, Arletta, and I can tell a very stark difference between what houses in Northeast I saw that would seem prime for redevelopment and what houses off 67th and Foster might take advantage of these. And the people who live in those houses do not seem like developers who are ready to build triplexes. I don't know if they'll have the same access to funding to get this. I also see those homes used as rentals that are renting out below market rate. And so I think that this is going to affect neighborhoods really differently, which we've heard lots of times. And if we're going back and saying these are the follow-ups to this program, I think it's really important we dedicate money and staff time to those.
Thank you. So unless there's a burning desire to do something here, I'm going to suggest that we defer this until we're actually writing the letter, and we can be strategic at that point and then queue up a second letter later. Okay. Sandra, anything else to do today?
So I just wanted to let you know that we updated the tentative calendar for the PSC today. The next meeting is on August 28th, and you have neighborhood contact at that meeting, but we had some time, and we know that you like to meet longer. So we added cottage clusters. I think I have a few scribbles of some other things that will come back with floodplains, tree code. Is that right? Tree code? Driveway spacing. So we'll regroup and we'll take up a little more of your time on that date. Hopefully we'll be done with straw votes.
Can I suggest that we organize that such that cottage clusters come last, so when Eli has to recuse himself, he can just go home rather than hanging around?
Sounds good. Sounds good. We'll do that. And then we will come back on September 11th, and we'll publish around September 1st, right after Labor Day, a new 8-pager. So, you know, the 8-pager that's been guiding us and that we've used throughout this whole process. So our hope is to put together what your proposal looks like so you can take a look at it. It's not code language. It's, you know, these concept languages of where you landed on everything. We might even have some questions in there for us to run through on the 11th. And then maybe we can talk about the letter at that point of time. And then we would go away and do the code work and the mapping work and come back sometime in the fall with, here's the revised proposed draft based on your direction. And you would see that at that time. So I hope that sounds good to you. We did talk internally today about Better Housing by Design and how that sinks in. You have 2 work sessions in early October for Better Housing by Design. If all goes well and you make your big concept changes during those, hopefully you're not making big concept changes, but if you are, hopefully it'll happen during that time period, and we'll be working with Bill on how that aligns with our work, and then get you the information that we need to make sure that we all feel confident about both the recommendations moving forward.
Okay. Andre.
I don't know if it's going to be on the 9th when you do the 8-pager, but it's been brought up through this process. Could we just get like a numbers count of, if you looked at a neighborhood today in Portland, I'm going to use the word residential, but if you looked in R5, the 96% that we've said, how many potential homes could you build, including the ADUs? And now with all the changes, what's the potential? What's the number? And when you just walk through all the numbers, I think it's really a numbers page of this is how many units you could expect on a block, potentially.
Likely or potential?
Well, I'm just saying potential. We can build 4 homes. So that's what the code allows. So how many homes can you build? How many units on a block, when we look at that 96, are we going to get in Portland additional? That's what we voted, yes. And I want to look at all those numbers to be able to say it's a big change. I mean, we're all kind of admitting it's a big change, but how big is the leap? And whether or not you build it or not, that's a big discussion. But we voted to say yes to all these changes.
Before Joe goes, I just want to express a little bit of concern about that, because what's possible versus what's likely to be built are hugely different. And part of the reason we're amping things up is because we know in some ways this redevelopment is got a lot of friction against it. So we're providing some grease to help overcome that friction. We're never going to get all the way to the end of the slide, and why scare people with what's out there when it's not going to happen? So, Joe.
Well, and as part of taking this to City Council, we are going to need to estimate what we think the impact's going to be in terms of the number of units produced over our 20-year time frame planning period, and what the traffic-related impacts are. We have to have that case solid to even be able to make findings against a comprehensive plan. So that part we're going to do. And what Chris said is the difference is we're going to be looking at not so much what's possible, but what's what could more likely to be expected given the economics of the district. Just think how much capacity we've zoned into the central city compared to when we did the central city plan, how much we thought would actually get developed. We have to do a version of that for the corridor or for the neighborhoods as well. And that's where the size of the house makes the biggest difference. The ability to divide the lot makes some difference. And then where it falls in different neighborhoods in town makes a big difference too. And so we have to model that.
And having high, medium, and low cases would be perfectly reasonable, but I think having the worst possible case is not very useful and just hurts the proposal.
I want to respond.
Please do.
But go ahead. Everybody go ahead, and then I'll respond.
Well, I want to put on the table also how much floor area of homes can you build in these neighborhoods today,
right,
versus under this proposal. And if we're going to go extreme, then go extreme there too.
Yep.
I mean, I think that this right now you can build a lot of house on every single family lot in Portland, inside the A overlay, outside the A overlay, anywhere you want. And so I'd want to have that presented as another thing that we've been wrestling with.
Yeah.
And I think that we've done a lot to work on that.
Teresa.
Oh, I just wanted to say in support of Andre, it's very standard scenario modeling, max and then probable. And, people can do math too. So I think it's already contentious, and fixing a number before, I don't think it'll fix it.
I'm just I guess, more on the side of perhaps framing it more as Joe and Chris framed it, that actually understanding impact to me is more, potential impact to me is more valuable than outside unlikely scenarios. So in focusing the efforts, I guess I would prefer to see the efforts focused on what we actually think the potential impact is really going to be.
I agree with Andre about having the number out there, because somebody's going to figure it out anyway. So let's put the number out there, but I think we should at the same time do what Eli's saying. Also figure out, what are the numbers for the potential right now? We already know from multifamily, if we built as much as we could, we could build 1 million units. Right. It's such a high number, and the market's not doing what we can do in the zone now. And I think you're much more credible if you put out the number ourselves and then go to reality, but do it for every zone.
That was the response was, it's about our credibility, and we have nothing to hide here. It's not only how many maximum units, it's what is the coverage today potential, what is the coverage in the future. All of those things are numbers that the public can make its own decision, but we ought to be transparent and tell people this is the change. I mean, Eli's right. You can build more today than potentially in the future, but we ought to tell people that. We shouldn't hide the fact that maybe you can build less or more. Maybe there's more units, but there's less footage on the ground. And that's a difference that people need to know. The fact that you have more units doesn't necessarily mean that's bad if there's less footage and they're configured correctly, and the height and all of those things get to what potentially is the neighborhood going to look like and what's the probability of that occurring. I think you want to be transparent about that. And then you have a story to tell. If you're hiding things and the public's bringing those up, then it looks like we're trying to pass something that we don't want to tell the full story.
I agree, we should be transparent. Thank you. I believe we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.